What is going on, everybody? Welcome to NBA Deeper Dive, presented by Stokastic and Portfolio EV. I'm Eric Lindquist. You can follow me at Eric Lindquist. I'm excited because this Thursday, and most Thursdays, I think, going forward, I'm going to get to hang out with the one, the only Chris Spags. He's the OG, the guy that I started over here with, that I get to hang out with now on Thursdays going forward, and some intermittent other days as well. Go follow him at Chris Spags. He does a lot of great content over there on Splash Play, doing so many things for the NBA streets here as well, covering his projections leading into the show. You need to be checking that out Monday through Friday. Spags, how was your All-Star break?
With that plug, how could it be bad? No, it was good. It was good to get some time away to kind of recalibrate. It's tough because this process, I know Josh talked about it on the strategy show this morning, but like you get into a rhythm of doing these shows every day, preparing every day. And when you don't have it, it's like, oh, you're kind of like missing a limb, even though it's a limb that sometimes you want to rip off your own body. And that might be the case today with the Bucks Q tags floating around. It was an all-star break for the players, Eric, and maybe they didn't get rest much like you didn't get rest.
No, I'm getting some rest like right now. Jordan Klein's really excited for my next, 56 minutes. Look at that quick math. Go me. Yeah, once again, it wasn't, we're still up to a lot over here. I was in the college basketball streets getting some bets down, up over 4 units there, tracked all entails. Very, very nice stuff. Again, not crazy, but, for a guy who hadn't watched any college basketball aside from Duke and Iowa State this year, I'm pretty okay with that. So bided my time, but ready to attack this slate. How do you feel about it coming into it? Because obviously, no Wemby. Seems like that's important.
Yeah, that's obviously a big thing on the slate. I have some questions about, frankly, things everybody else is going to have questions on the slate, but like Elfrid Payton's probably my biggest question on the slate overall. I think he's going to end up being very chalky today, and he has been a player that looks nothing like the Elfrid Payton we've known for almost a decade in terms of how he's played so far on the Hornets. That's an intriguing one, but really the lack of value, I think, is going to make this a situation, at least right now, and certainly things can open up. If you get Lillard and Giannis out, that'll change things quite a bit as well. But right now, there isn't really good value, and after an all-star break, it would be nice to have a little bit of an easy layup option. Instead, you're going to have to really think for yourself throughout the course of this slate. And we'll have to think for ourselves, Eric, throughout the course of this video, unfortunately.
Spags, be careful what you wish for, because I have a feeling, I don't know what percentage chance there is, but like Jeremy Sohan, I think, is the pretty clear chalk to start at the 5 today for San Antonio. Bismack Biyombo could be a thing today. And I don't want to say that out loud too often or too frequently here, but like, what are they going to do at the 5 today?
I think they're going to start Sohan. I mean, Sohan was the backup. Biyombo wasn't in the rotation before the break. And like, I mean, you said it, like, I think that's the thing. And I've seen it, cross content as part of just what I do to prepare every day, watching their stuff out there, checking social media. Everybody's been saying like, oh, Biyombo is going to be a smash player, right? And it's like, I think people might be shocked to learn that he might not actually get, a full run of minutes here. And 20 minutes is the projection, I think, from Stokastic last I saw. If he plays
13 now.
Oh, it's even lower. Okay.
Oh, yeah. We ramped it down, which is good.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, it's going to be a weird slate. That's for sure. You're going to want to keep your phone close, your enemies close, or whatever the saying is. We're ready to rock. You ready to roll, Spags?
Let's do it.
All right. First game right off the bat. We've got ourselves Memphis at Indy. 2.5-point favorites are the Memphis Grizzlies. 250 total. So obviously this thing is going to be moving. But I got to ask you, because this is just kind of the way that this slate works. We get one game that's early that has crazy amount of pace in it, and yet I'm really not finding myself onto anything. Starting on the Memphis side, I have a little bit of Ja Morant, one of 150 with Ja Morant. I have 2 of 150 with Desmond Bane. I have 6 of 150 with Santi Aldama. I think that's okay by me, considering Obi Toppin got some more minutes last time out against Washington. Not saying that that's going to be something that happens immediately again here, but a lot of these Memphis games can tend to go small where they get away from Edey, and you just start having Santi Aldama and Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5. How do you look at Memphis today? Because this is obviously a pace-up spot for both teams, which is weird to say when they're both pace-up teams themselves.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, I saw the total here for both teams, and I was running through things before the show and was really shocked to see it be this high. But it's even more shocking to see because, like, nobody projects to be a smash play from the spot overall between Memphis and Indiana. And I think you can make the case here that there's probably a decent shot of a tournament winner coming from this because of how high the total is, because of how high basically the pace is, as Eric mentioned, for both teams, and in particular for Indiana getting one of the bigger pace ups in the league right now with how fast Memphis is playing. But I'm really not getting a lot of these guys. I'm getting the most on the Memphis side, getting getting 15% Desmond Bane, which I'm okay with, but I really don't think he's like an elite play here. The issue is for Memphis in particular. Before the break, they played, I think, 13 guys in a rotation in a game without Ja Morant. That includes some blowout time. But here they're projected to have about 11 guys playing real minutes, then a few guys who can play maybe 1 or 2 minutes alongside that. That's a pretty crowded rotation, and nobody plays high 30s minutes for Memphis. So if you want to kind of hold your nose on the projection and go in and get aggressive on Ja Morant or Jaren Jackson, I would get it because of that total and because of the pace and the matchup. But like these guys just don't project well enough to get them naturally. And that's where the theoretical opportunity is, if not the actual opportunity.
Yeah, I love the theoretical opportunity because, yeah, I mean, there's Marvin Bagley who's available for today. Doubt he gets any minutes, but just saying that there are so many guys that they can go to. And it's kind of the same thing I look at with the indie side of it, too. We've seen Andrew Nembhard play a little bit poorly where they can go to some Ben Shepherd, but do we even want to click on anything that has to do with Aaron Nesmith or any of these other ancillary options? I don't really think so. And so once again, despite a 250 total, it's basically just the studs for me. Pascal Siakam showing up in 20% of my lineups would probably want to trim that down simply because of I like the late swappability that exists there. Tyrese Halliburton, it is jarring to see an 8K tag next to him, but the minutes rarely get extended. He has TJ McConnell direct backup to him there. There's enough other guards between Nesmith and Benedict Mathurin. It's so hard for me still to click on him there when there are other guys to be playing. So it's Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, who's back in the fray here at 6K, and then nothing else on the indie side. Do you have anything that's popping for you?
I'm getting 17% Siakam, which I'm okay with. I actually am a little bit lower projected than Stokastic, though, so kind of surprised to see it. But power forward eligible under 8K, and the pace up spot here with the high total, like it seems like that's the guy you get. But I would say for me, like I kind of view Siakam, Halliburton, Turner, all as very similar plays where none of them project poorly. In fact, I would have Turner being the best, point per dollar guy based off that median projection. But like they all kind of have a similar opportunity here to find an outlier day. So like I would try to flatten the ownership out. Like I don't really need to be up on Siakam. I think getting more like 10 to 15% of Halliburton, 10 to 15% of Siakam, 10 to 15% of Turner, I guess as well, I think feels right. Mathurin is a semi-value play in a slate where there isn't any. I get going there, but really just nobody, like we talked about, like just nobody looks like a must-have play here. And I get the ownership I'm getting. I want to get some, but there's like the Knicks are a slate defining play for me. I think both the Memphis side and the Indiana side are just kind of plays on a slate.
Yeah, and then we have pending news. We'll cover it as we go along. There's just no pending news in this game. So no matter what happens, I think Halliburton, Turner, Siakam, if they fall into a lineup or two, sounds great because they're still going to look good as a tournament option relative to any of the plays that could potentially show up. But I just don't find any of them all that enthusiastically interesting. Somebody that I want to get in over, a quarter of my lineups by any means, let alone 10, 15% for some of those options that aren't Pascal Siakam. But speaking of Siakam, looking at the portfolio EV board, one of our top plays of the entire day, it showed up 4 minutes ago over on FanDuel. We have that EV age that is graded right in there. So when something changed. That's a pretty big line move there. Minus 111 that you're getting for the under of 1.5 threes for Siakam. Next available book, minus 137 at Caesars Spags. That's a pretty big difference.
That is a pretty nice difference there. And the line shopping there that you're doing automatically with odd shoppers, most important thing. And people don't grasp that. The volume and line shopping are like all you need in betting. As Eric could tell you, I'm sure, following Twitter's For You page as I have. And some people don't grasp that, but your edge, your all that stuff. And yeah, it's pretty clearly laid out right there.
Those who can do, and those who can't go on Spaces.
And then act like it's the biggest interview show around.
I will say I've actually enjoyed my time listening. So keep it up. Keep it up, Elf. You're doing great, sweetie. Anyway, anything you want to cover in this game? Because yeah, it's a 250 total where I have very little DFS interest. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, it's a weird one. And granted, there is one other team on the slate that has almost a 130-point total as well. So it's kind of odd. But yeah, for DFS, look, your fundamental principles normally are chasing pace, high totals, concentrated usage. You have some of that stuff here. So if you want to take shots on it and kind of ignore some of the projection math, I think that'd be reasonable to do. But, that's your mileage may vary.
Doesn't vary here because nobody wants to play anything. We got Philly, we got Boston, probably our quickest game to talk about on the whole slate. This line's come from 8.5 down to 7. So I think rightfully I think we can all expect Joel Embiid to play better going forward, and he's still been a 92%, 92nd percentile player over on dunks and threes in terms of plus minus. Estimated plus minus going forward, 99th percentile. He looks great in my sheet for what it's worth. I think if you wanted to take a shot on him, you wanted to take a shot on Tatum, you can absolutely do that, but I have nothing in this game outside of Drew Holiday at 4,400. I'm not even sure that I will get to a share of anything else other than Drew Holiday at 4,400. I'm just going to lump the whole game together, Spags. Do you have any interest more than the field does on anybody?
No, honestly, even Drew Holiday, I'm only getting 5% compared to the field's 11. So I like the price tag for Holiday looks good, but everything else here, these guys kind of got priced up a little bit just for that time without Drew Holiday before the break. And as a result, they don't look that good when you are facing a down pace spot, even against, a team like Philadelphia that's, I would say, pretty firmly league average, if not worse than league average, with about a 116 defensive efficiency rating. So Boston, I could get somebody here hitting, but again, another team that nobody owned over 5% besides Drew Holiday, and Drew Holiday is crazy cheap. Just doesn't feel like there's a play here that you must have on a slate where do you feel like there are games where you have like absolute must plays?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Memphis Indy with a 250 total, this going to 225.5, but then everybody's healthy. And I get the Drew Holiday play. I just think that at 4,400 for him there, he'd have to have kind of like an outlier minutes allotment. Like Peyton Pritchard's still going to be playing some behind him there. I'm not sure that they ramp up Drew Holiday coming off of the break right away here. Obviously, he's been out for quite some time. He got back it's been over 2 weeks, since February 4th for him. So it's hard for me to say that he's going to play enough minutes to really kill you there. If he got to 32, I'd start to have concern that I didn't have him. But I mean, single entry, he's about the only guy that I could even consider outside of Embiid and Tatum that you're just taking shots on because the positionality, because of what they can do from a raw points perspective. But if you have to play one player for a lineup that isn't Drew Holiday in this entire game, who is it?
Oh man, honestly, none of them would look that great, but I think Jaylen Brown would be the closest to me at 8K. Okay. But even then, it feels like he should normally be around, if Holiday's in, 75 to 7,900. So really none of them would look good enough to play at volume, but I think Brown would be the closest.
Let's just move on then, because obviously we will take our time as we go along here on this show. But 2 games down, 7 to go. Hit that like button as we go Orlando -1.
We're not covering Philly?
What? I have nothing from Philly. I have nothing. Oh. I put the whole game together. Do you have anything from Philly?
Oh, Grimes. I think Grimes is worth a little bit here. 5% for the field.
Assuming he starts, right?
Yes, assuming he starts. Because right now he's projected for about 35 minutes by Stokastic, which is pretty aggressive. It does assume the start here. But he's been good. I mean, I think the issue you're running into now is like Paul George. We saw before the break, Paul George playing terribly, but also not really getting shots up. At a certain point, he will get more shots up. Embiid will get more. Maxey will get more. So Grimes, I think, comes down a little bit, but I think he's playable at 5K. There's enough people being played on this range that I think are not good, and Grimes at least shooting guard, small forward. So I get that. And I have to say Embiid too. I like Towns infinitely more. I have Towns projected for about 16 fantasy points more, but Towns will be owned, Embiid won't. So yeah, I mean, it's a gap, but Embiid's been shit this year. Towns is good and playing Chicago. So I like Towns a lot. But that said, Embiid at no ownership, that's your direct leverage on Towns if you want to take it.
You said 16 fantasy points?
Yeah, I have Towns at 57 and Embiid at 42.
That is a gap.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little closer than that. I believe it's right around 6 fantasy points here at Stokastic for the day, but I'm with you. I definitely prioritize Karl Anthony Towns. We'll, of course, cover that. Considering him, Jalen Brunson, huge portions of this slate, as they should be, with some of that usage. Excited to talk through that one. Not really that excited to talk about anything else here on the Philly side. We go to Orlando now, taking on Atlanta. 223 total. Really low for an Atlanta game, really high for an Orlando game. And I think the same thing that's happened on a number of these slates continues to happen here. We have Orlando, where the main 2 guys, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, they're great mid-range 8K options. I will say Franz Wagner's been dominating the usage when both of them are on the floor together. They will stagger them some, but north of 33% usage for Franz Wagner, just over 25% in extremely inefficient shooting when they're on the floor together for Paolo Banchero. I definitely side on the Franz Wagner side for 300 more plus, covers the small forward position. I'm a little surprised to see Paolo Banchero pulling that much. I do expect positive regression for the shooting. Sub 40% true shooting is not even remotely going to be what happens going forward when they're sharing the floor together. But how do you see the Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero split on DraftKings, Spags?
I'm getting more Banchero right now, which I get it because of the cheaper price tag, and these guys look like similar enough plays. But I think, as Eric mentioned, like I do think on the year, I mean, you could see it with the rate difference. It's 1.26 for Franz compared to 1.2 for Banchero. A little more efficiency for Franz's way as well. Better true shooter with 57% true shooting compared to Banchero being about 51 and change. So like Franz has been the better play, but I think these guys functionally for a DFS slate with when they're priced kind of similarly, like they're very similar plays. So getting about 25% Banchero in my top 150 lineups right now compared to 20% for Franz, you could flip those and I wouldn't feel too differently about it. But I think getting a little bit of a cheaper play in Banchero and probably a guy who's due to have some better days, I think for Banchero feels right. But I'm with you that I think Fran's been the better player on the year. And like, that's just, I think, because the price tag favors Banchero that you get more. But like, they're both to me close enough that I think taking shots equally on them feels about right.
Yeah, I mean, depends on what you're doing on the previous game. I kind of poo-pooed on Siakam, but Siakam is $500 less than you're getting going towards Banchero. And, I'm obviously talking about them sharing the floor together. They will stagger, and you've had Banchero lead this team in usage overall on the season at 33.3% next to Franz Wagner at 32.8. But I do expect Franz to continue to be the more efficient shooter, to be the guy who takes more shots, has the 27% assist rate to go with it. You could just tick for tat. Depends on what other value shows up, I suppose, but you can't reverse engineer it. So kind of want to have a little bit of a plan in place. Right now, that plan is 28% Franz Wagner and 12% Paulo Banchero, which is probably a little aggressive. Probably want to mute both down a little bit, especially with pending value. But I don't think there's a lot of interesting punts or shots that I want to take. Wendell Carter's down to 4,100. I just don't think I need to go that direction on today's slate. We have Jonathan Isaac pulling 8.5% ownership at 3,400, kind of a price tag play, if you will. But I just think there's better options to be going to on the board, even though this is as good of a matchup as you can possibly run into for pace going up against Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. Like, these guys are coming up because you are gaining a few extra possessions, playing a team that's certainly not good defensively on the Atlanta side. But really, to me, like Wendell Carter, you have enough center minutes to go around there between Batadze and obviously Wendell himself. But Wendell himself not contributing that much on the year at 0.9 fantasy points a minute, and it's not like you're guaranteed 30 minutes here. So for me, I think he doesn't look like a great value play. Jonathan Isaac on a slate where there's no value, you get him sometimes because he produces well per minute, averaging about 1.02 on the year. But even that's not like a smash value play either. So you're going to get these guys right now. I think our hope would be that some better value opens up. But I think that these guys, KCP, similar kind of play. They're all playable, but like they're all 5 to 10% plays and not really big value stands here.
Yeah, well, there's a value stand that I have value-esque at 5,300 stand over on the Atlanta side. It's funny, too, because we have Orlando 29th in pace in the NBA, top 3 defense in the NBA, adjusted defensive rating on dunks and threes. And yet, I kind of like this Atlanta team a lot for tournaments. Not Trae Young at 9,400. I think we can do a little bit better at the point guard position in terms of spend ups and some of the punt options, especially, now that we have De'Aaron Fox unlocked. But Dyson Daniels showing up north of 11% of my lineups. He's sitting sub 7%. Okongwu, one of the biggest discrepancies we have in the boom bust tool right now. He's pulling at 9% ownership. I have him at 25% of my lineups. And then the guy I was referring to, Karis LeVert, shooting guard, small forward, 5,300. I don't know what to make of it, but they basically played an 8-man rotation with 3 of those players. Sub 18 minutes last time out with Mohamed Gay, a number of these other guys coming off the bench for Atlanta, but with no Vic Krejci out there, I think Karis LeVert's unlocked for like 30 plus minutes in almost all scenarios. How do you feel about him specifically and the rest of this entire Atlanta team?
Yeah, I'm getting LeVert about 10%, so I'm with the field on him. I do think he's been an interesting player so far. The rate's taking a pretty jump up so far. His time in Atlanta, the rebound rate in particular, getting kind of closer to where he was his Brooklyn days. Usage not topping 20%, so I think there's another level for him to hit, but he's been pretty efficient, can contribute in terms of rebounds, assists, overall upside. And I would have him averaging about 0.9 and change fantasy points a minute today, so I think he is a reasonable value play to get to here, but not a big stand for me being kind of flat with the field 10%. Getting a lot of Okongwu, though, with the Stokastic sim. Did notice as well he was in a lot of the top ROI lineups. I'm actually getting him 3x the field right now. It's a really big stand for me with Okongwu. I assume we're getting Capella back in the rotation after he was inactive before the break, and that does sort of hurt the minute ceiling a little bit, even though Capella, you don't expect him to come in, I think, the same minutes he had before, because doesn't seem like they wanted him on the team, and now they're just going to be forced to kind of play him a little bit. But Okongwu, I think, is a center option there who has the upside, reasonably priced at 6,100 on DraftKings. He looks okay to me. Everything else here, I'm with you. Trae Young, I know there are some favorable prop markets out there, but I don't see it projection-wise. He gets a little bit less assist upside in court time without DeAndre Hunter and the guys who basically are no longer in the Hawks rotation, including Jalen Johnson. Dyson Daniels, I think, is an interesting tournament option, but I'm not getting there price-wise. It feels like there's something here more than Okongwu, but I'm really just getting a lot of Okongwu right now.
Yeah, Okongwu, Levert. I guess the main thing is like we can put Capella in for that backup center role, and it doesn't really change anything that I'm doing with Okongwu because Dominic Marlowe, 12 minutes that we had for him against the Knicks. The Knicks, Karl Anthony Towns basically played the 4 in Minnesota with Rudy Gobert that last season. And, obviously there are small ball iterations, Precious Achiuwa as well, that can play the 5 there for the Knicks. And so Dominic Barlow isn't a great, like 1-for-1 swap as far as like Clint Capella. You could basically add 2 or 3 minutes to that, but Okongwu played 35 and change in regulation there before the 5-minute overtime. I mean, there's just such a massive minute ceiling. Plus, he does things like knock down shots that Clint Capella just can't. And floor spacing matters so much for this Atlanta team with no DeAndre Hunter out there, with Trae Young at the point. I think we're pretty locked into Okongwu being a 30-plus minute a night center.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, I think right now the Stokastic minutes are playing a little more conservatively and, still doing the same 48-minute split. And I get why you would do that. But I would agree, like, if you have Capella being inactive and it seemed like he was able to play like in the last game before the break, but they just had him inactive anyway. I don't know that he gets the same minutes. So I'm with you. Like, if Okongwu gets closer to like 33 and Capella's at around 15, that starts to look a little bit better for Okongwu at this price tag. And probably he wouldn't hold this price tag very long if he did start getting like about 33 minutes per game.
Iowa State's finest George Niang has played 26 and 34 minutes in 2 of his 3 games in an Atlanta uniform. He's 4,300. I don't completely hate the idea of taking a shot or two on him. He's only 2.5% owned. I just don't know if we just see him locked into like that kind of a role. I'm far more convinced, if you will, that Okongwu, the better fantasy performer and the guy who's going to be locked into more minutes going forward, I'm much more comfortable clicking on him and making an aggressive stand. Our projections obviously being conservative, and yet he's popping in the boom bust tool. So Okongwu I like, but do I like anything else from Atlanta? Because George Niang's showing up above the field for me.
I think if Levert were getting a lot more ownership, I'd consider Niang more and just assume those are kind of coming from the same pool of usage and opportunity that hasn't been fully solidified yet with these guys kind of entering the rotation. But Niang, like I gave him the rate boost he's gotten from the Hawks so far. He comes up a little bit in usage, a little bit in assist rate, but not enough that he's like looking like a brand new man. I think he stabilizes probably where he's been for this year and most of his career. Levert, at least, there's a real upside. So I would favor Levert over him, but I think you could take a shot on Niang at that price tag because he's been a good producer. And as Eric mentioned, the minute spikes have been there for him. And without Krejci with that back injury, there's definitely minutes to go around. Nance too being out, like there's room for these guys and Terrence Mann to maybe get a little more minutes than I expected.
All righty. We have a portfolio EV for this one. Jordan Klein, just want to pull that up on the screen here quick before we talk about portfolio EV and about all the great ways that you can sign up and get yourself access to perhaps the best tool in the entire industry, for sure the most forward-facing tool in the entire industry. Historical ROIs posted for you to see, seeing all the markets, seeing exactly which books there is success and seeing which books there is less success, because generally speaking, the HROIs have been very positive. And we've got people that are proving it every single day with the tools. I'm over here in Arizona firing everything up this week with portfolio EV. But Dyson Daniels, under 5.5 rebounds, sitting at plus 105. I do think he's interesting in terms of like one piece of deviation in a pretty otherwise chalky lineup that you're looking at. I just think that there's a way that 5.5 rebounds plus money going that direction with Okongwu, Mohamed Gay out on the floor now as well. He can play 16, 18 minutes. A guy in Clint Capella who's going to be a better rebounder than Dominic Barlow as a backup 5. I think that there's lots of ways against Orlando and that front court that this is a pretty good investment here over on DraftKings. HROI of this one sitting up there as well, 6.7% in this market over on DraftKings. Spags, I mean, have you been digging into portfolio EV a little bit? Because obviously these are the kind of plays that I really, really like to click on over there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you could take it's a volume game with all the market-based betting stuff, and I got access last week to it, so I've been playing with it a little bit more. The ease of getting through too, which I think is one of the big barriers for people in terms of volume betting, which is really the most important part for market-based data, giving yourself a chance for that ROI to materialize. The fact you could do one-click entry for this stuff is really important, but for this particular bet for Dyson Daniels, I have him at 5. So like when you get plus money at the projectional lines, and you also know you're getting the best data telling you that's a good bet, that's usually the ones I would flock to more. And you don't need to increase your unit size or anything, but like if you wanted to, that's the time I think to increase a unit. So Daniels to me looking pretty good here.
Yeah, if you guys want to try it out for free too, we've got link joins that are just, I mean, 11 different sites. We have Pick'em, we have the sports books, we have everything, no matter which state you're in, whether it's Florida with one book and Hard Rock, Maine, one book and DraftKings, Oregon, I believe as well, whether it's California with Pick'em alone, or Arizona where you have access to absolutely everything. There are 6 Pick'em sites on the left side of the screen, 6 sports books on the right. You have Rebet, a sweepstakes book. Lots of ways to be able to get in completely free right now with that link join. So yeah, Jordan Klein, if you could pull that up for the people, just so that they can see how they can get access over to Portfolio EV completely free. It is a great opportunity to jump in. Low price of $0, plus you get all of the great sportsbook signups or Pick'em signups to go along with it. Great opportunity, so be checking that out. Yeah, as it says above me, stop guessing, start winning. That applies over on the Odd Shopper side as well. You don't want to be guessing. Market-based betting, it is definitely a volume game. It is definitely something that day in, day out, you can take advantage of. Where there are bets in sports active, we will find you guys edges over with that tool. Let's continue on here then to Cleveland. Jordan, are you there? Are you okay? Did you not hear anything I just said?
Okay. I thought Jordan did one of his classic go to the bathroom moves, and then
I've got that too. That's coming up later. Thanks a lot.
I go silent. Classic married relationship. Jordan Klein with Eric here.
I don't have Matt Gajeski. I got to use somebody, and I'm using Jordan Klein. Anyway, Cleveland, 13-point favorites on the road in Brooklyn, 225.5 total that we're staring at here right now. Yet another game with very little injury news. We do have a little bit that affects something that I want to do with Cleveland, with Isaac Okoro questionable, Ty Jerome questionable. As for Brooklyn, Ben Simmons is now going to be thriving in LA, it would appear, with the Clippers. We got Cam Thomas and Noah Clowney out, but overall, they just hate to give D'Angelo Russell minutes, so it's just funny writing 26 minutes in for him every freaking day. Eventually, there'll be a day where he plays 30-plus minutes. Hopefully, today is not that day, but let's start with Cleveland here. If you end up getting Ty Jerome out, I do think it does solidify the Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell thing. We saw some backup point guard duty for Craig Porter Jr. coming off the bench, but I think you can give a little bit of a minutes bump, 1-2 minutes to Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell as a result. We've seen Ty Jerome play himself into closing lineups. Obviously, this is a Brooklyn spot that just isn't all that appealing overall as we're looking at it, because Brooklyn, by far the slowest pace in the NBA over their last 5, last 10, and for the season. And yet, there's still some ways that I can get to Cleveland with the number one offense here. I'm specifically citing Ty Jerome if he ends up playing 4,300. Otherwise, it's just simply lineup filler. How do you feel about Cleveland, Spags?
Yeah, if Ty Jerome is in, I think he's the only play I actually want here, getting him a little bit over 10% in my lineups right now in my top 150. He's been a 1.12 fantasy point per minute guy. He's been one of my favorite plays on the year, where if I get him on a slate, he usually hits, which is not usually how DFS works. But I like him overall in terms of that opportunity. But like Eric mentioned, if he's out, Craig Porter Jr. gets closer to a playable value, but he's not going to get the same run of minutes, not the same run of opportunity, and he averages about honestly 0.3 fantasy points a minute less than Ty Jerome. So he's not the same player, but you can take that shot if Jerome's out. But I'd rather have Jerome in, keep it clean as it is. I think this team right now doesn't look the most appealing to me because DeAndre Hunter, like I haven't adjusted his rates yet. His usage is coming down a little bit so far. It was at 25% going back to Atlanta. Now he's down to I think 23.9%. That's going to probably keep creeping down, but I don't want to knock him down prematurely. And I think for right now, this team feels appropriately balanced. But, Hunter, I think maybe you could take some shots at 4,900 and hope that he just gets more usage like he was getting in Atlanta, because he was getting up a lot of shots on the Hawks. And now he's kind of becoming fancy Isaac Okoro is basically the way they're treating him as right now.
Yeah, honestly, he was the guy I was going to kind of cite. If you get Ty Jerome, if you get Ty Jerome and you get Isaac Okoro both ruled out here, I think there's a world where DeAndre Hunter, I mean, he was acquired to go out there and shoot, like floor spacing, just continue to do it. Kenny Atkinson's offense, they're shooting the fourth most threes in the NBA. North of 45% of their field goal attempts are from deep. That's still nowhere close to 53 and change that Boston has, number one by far in the NBA. But I do think that there's a world where DeAndre Hunter goes out, makes 5-6 threes, get some extra run in that second unit where they want to be utilizing him. We did see Max Strus get that start in the first game where they were both active. So only 2-game sample size for DeAndre Hunter. I got to think the minutes have a place to go up from 23 and 27, maybe kind of just getting him going a little bit there. Both of those were blowouts against Minnesota and Toronto. Maybe we see a more competitive game. 4,900 still in play for me, but boy, nobody's a priority here.
Yeah. And the Hunter thing to me is like, I really thought he was playing well in Atlanta relative to what I thought of DeAndre Hunter, where he's kind of been in my mind, 3-and-D guy primarily, but having 25% usage and 62% true shooting is like pretty good numbers. So he can get going at any day, and maybe today is it, but Brooklyn, a down pace spot, less possessions to go around. Like, I'm not going to go full throated for it, but Hunter to me is like an intriguing player at this point.
Yeah, we got Cleveland on the other side of, or sorry, not Cleveland on the other side, Brooklyn on the other side of this one. More of like those same tournament darts that you can take on a number of pieces. Nobody on the entire team is over 6K on DraftKings. On FanDuel, kind of the same situation. Everybody's really cheap, but nobody's really getting their minutes extended. I brought it up before. D'Angelo Russell just never, ever going to see 30 minutes again in his life in Brooklyn. You got Keon Johnson pulling a little bit of ownership, sub 5K for him with shooting guard eligibility. But it's kind of Cameron Johnson or bust for me. I think there's always a case to take shots on a Day'Ron Sharpe, hoping that, he can get into more minutes. But this is not going to be that slate for me with the number of other centers we'll talk about coming up here in the next 5 games. Do you have anything from Brooklyn that stands out?
Getting Cam Johnson, I think a similar amount to what I assume you are, under 10%, basically with the field on it. Getting Day'Ron Sharpe at 7%, so a little bit under the field there, but technically enough of a stand to highlight. And Trenton Watford as a value, getting a few more minutes here. It's a short rotation on paper for Brooklyn. Killian Hayes, I don't think is going to be, I don't know if he's officially available or not, but he was signed theoretically. I know Josh in the strategy show, he wasn't officially on the roster as of this morning. He's being projected for a few minutes right now, but if he doesn't play, it's basically a 10-man rotation at that point. But despite having a 10-man rotation, nobody looks that good. Russell, who you talked about, like, I don't think he gets the 30 at any point this year because they're not sitting him because of injury. They're sitting him because it's whenever they're up in a game in the fourth quarter and they pull him out and then they see what happens from there. Nobody plays for this team. It's a really stupid team right now. And they still have guys that have legit usage and are priced appropriately, like Cam Johnson, like Russell. So Brooklyn is just one of the most bizarre teams. Like, usually a 10-man rotation, something looks good. Nothing looks good to me here besides the 10%-ish guys.
Yeah, maybe better from betting perspective. Keon Johnson, we have that under of 20.5 that is available over at the Hard Rock, baby. Yeah, shout out Florida, shout out Arizona. 3.7% expected value there we've got going. That's been around for 19 minutes, 21 minutes now here, but under 20.5 for him. I think that that's a decent ad because, well, they just don't want to extend anybody's minutes, it would appear. So I still can't believe Cameron Johnson's on this team after the trade deadline, but such is life. Another quick game. Now we get to the good stuff, Spags.
Oh, thank God. It wasn't Brooklyn.
Oh, it was not Brooklyn. It's the other team in New York across the river bend, though. We've got ourselves the New York Knicks hosting. Yeah, it's going to be a fun one here. Chicago plus 12. Chicago, man. They do get Lonzo Ball back into the mix here, which makes it a little bit interesting. But this is not the part of the game that we're going to be playing all that much with Ball back in the mix. You got Io off the bench more than likely now, or Kobe White, Josh Giddey. I'm assuming Bazelis continues to start here for Chicago. Maybe something really changes there, but I don't really want to play him at 4,700 still. I mean, Chicago, we're going to talk about the Knicks at length, but anything for you here?
I'm getting 3x the field on Vucevic, which frankly, I don't feel great about. I love Towns a lot on the other side. Vucevic, though, I think at 7% owned feels a little bit light. My big issue with him is that his rates go down with Zach LaVine off the court. The usage comes down about 2% for him. The rebounding is flat, but the assist upside goes down a little bit as well. He really just doesn't become a better player with Levine out. I think in large part because you have, three guards kind of looking to establish their own, shot potential there with Kobe White, with Giddey, and with Dosunmu coming off. So, and Lonzo too, to a lesser extent. So like you just have a lot of guys there that combine kind of the sum of the parts end up taking, I think, more than Levine does. So as a result, Vooch to me normally doesn't look like a great play, but he's under 8K, 7,700, and he does get you direct leverage on Towns. So basically, if I don't have Towns, I think I'll get Vooch in some amount of lineups, and I think that feels pretty good to me. Everything else here, I'm with you. Nothing stands out. Buzelis, I think conceptually an appealing play, but projections just not there for him with the price tag creeping up. Kobe White and Giddey, I don't really see either. Barely getting any of those guys. It's kind of Vooch or bust for me here, even though I really don't love Vooch either.
Well, I love this side. The New York Knicks, man. We could be looking at even more potential value coming our way here shortly. And obviously, live before lock, hopefully they have this news, but for sure, playback will have this news. We got ourselves OG Anunoby questionable, and already Josh Hart, the guy who had the eternal Q tag next to his name for however many weeks and would play through it, gets ruled out of the middle of nowhere yesterday. So Josh Hart, right knee, not even going to try to say what it is. Femoral? I shouldn't have tried it. Anyway, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, my dear sweet God, are they pulling ownership? But they both should. All of the rebound opportunity, even with Precious Achiuwa walking into that starting lineup, considering Josh Hart, one of the better rebounding threes in the entire National Basketball Association, coming off of back-to-back 40 burgers pre-All-Star break. And then Jalen Brunson, who I actually prefer, and it would appear the field prefers too at 8,400. It's just simply a numbers game. And Jalen Brunson at 8,400 is way too cheap for this opportunity, Spags.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So basically, I think I'll end up about 50 to 66% here. Something I think got off in the sim because I don't think my projection imported correctly. So I'm seeing now. Basically, I would have Towns, and it has come down a little bit. I only have him about 13 points higher than Embiid now. So thankfully, sanity has prevailed. But Towns to me, he just looks like a monster. Like these guys both gained so much from Josh Hart being out. Towns averages 1.5 fantasy points a minute in court time without Hart this year. Brunson's averaging 1.4. Basically, when Hart is gone, the rebounds flow more freely to Towns. The assists flow more freely to Brunson. The usage goes more to these guys. They both are great plays to me. So if I had to choose having these guys in every lineup or having them in none, I would choose to have them in every lineup. I think the Sims are going to keep you relatively aligned to the field there, which I think is fair. Close to being, I think, 40 to 50% for these guys. But I think they're better plays than that. Like I have a hard time believing Towns fails here. Does he have enough of a ceiling to win a tournament on a slate where you have other legit centers? That's the question mark. But I want a lot of Towns here. So I imagine I'll be around 60% for him and Brunson. And they're both great plays. I'm with you though. Brunson's too cheap. Towns also has like a higher ceiling, I think, than Brunson does.
Oh, yeah, Towns for sure does. I'm not going to argue with that. Maybe not just raw scoring for sure, because they're both sitting identical points props, but you talk about the rebounding. You talk about how insane that can be against Vooch. And there's no doubt that Karl Anthony Towns definitely stands out for DraftKings purposes as well. On FanDuel, where you're playing one center, definitely a consideration for sure. But I want to at least throw out that you're playing one center over there. And there's a lot of these guys who have had power forward center eligibility over there that you can slide over. He will not be one of them here. So looking at the Knicks side there, we've got 26% ownership for him. He's a little bit over-owned at 9,900 for FanDuel purposes. Want to give them a little bit of love, but I think the other Knicks need to be talked about at length here, because we saw in that last game against Atlanta, 5 guys pull 42 plus minutes in the overtime when you add in the overtime. Well, one of them is out in Josh Hart, and we got to figure out where to those minutes are due, because OG Anunoby, he's been out quite a bit here too. Precious Achiuwa, if he steps into that starting unit, he's already locked in, but there could be more value on the way, and we already seem to like Cameron Payne's opportunity to play a lot more than the 8 minutes he saw last time out.
Yeah, the Payne thing I'm a little bit confused by, because Stokastic has Payne for 22 minutes, or actually no, 19 minutes. I think that he is a good play if you give him that many minutes, but I'm kind of wondering. I mean, obviously the minutes will work out if you do the math. It feels like Achiuwa and McBride are, to me, the only ones that really gain here. Unless you get Anunoby out, then I think you could talk me into Payne more. But like, one of Achiuwa or McBride will get a good amount of minutes filling in for Hart, much like they were getting a good amount of minutes filling in for Anunoby. It could be Achiuwa, but I think it's equally likely to be McBride, because Hart's kind of got that pseudo role, playing a little bit of guard, a little bit of forward, sometimes a little bit of center. That feels more like a McBride kind of situation than an Achua one. But I'm just not. Eric, do you have thoughts about this? Like, are you with the campaign thing? Because like it just feels like that's the kind of play people will then jam in an incessant amount. And I'm not sure I want to do that with him because I just don't buy that he gets to even 19 minutes.
So here's where I'm going back and forth with this entire game, because I think this is extremely important, because I think we could get a surprising starter. I think there's a world where Landry Shamet gets the start at the 3 if it ends up being Josh Hart out. You think about what's on the other side of this game, and you look at the matchup specifically. You got Giddey, White, Ball. Those are basically essentially 3 point guards that are getting thrown out into the mix. I don't think just immediately putting McBride in as your next guy up or Cameron Payne as your next guy up makes the most sense next to Brunson, Bridges, and him. But I guess it makes sense just with 3 basically pseudo point guards that are running that role there on the Chicago side. So I think that that's the most likely scenario. And if you get OG Anunoby, I mean, everybody becomes a player where you're just rotating through these guys ad nauseum and hoping you hit the right ones that get all of those minutes. But I actually said it backwards when I was explaining it before. It was Miles McBride that only had 8 minutes going up against Atlanta. It was Cameron Payne who walked into 15 minutes, didn't check in until the beginning of the second quarter there. Miles McBride got the first crack at it, but he basically did nothing. He's been shooting the ball so much less this season, has not been offensively inclined at all. I don't know what to make of it, but maybe Tibbs said enough is enough. And Cameron Payne has played pretty darn well relative to expectations for this Knicks team. So I do get where our projections are at with him.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like whenever the projections are, something that the projections see that I don't, I'm like, where am I wrong here?
Oh, McBride got hurt, somebody said.
Okay, so that could be part of it too. Like, I would just be careful of the minutes here, and I would certainly lean on the starter. I think personally, no matter what, even if Anunoby's in or out, I think the Achua minutes and McBride minutes are fairly safe. I really have questions about the campaign minutes that are currently reflected. Like, I just don't know that it gets to be that high. Because he got 15 with McBride out, and that was with Anunoby also out, but Hart in. So I'm just not sure where the pain minutes are coming from. But look, it's very likely I'm wrong about that, and Stokastic is right, because that tends to be how that would go.
No, it's a tough one, actually. I mean, pay attention to news, check out playback after this, or after Live Before Lock, that is, just because I do think McBride, Payne, Shamet, there's something that's going to stand out there. From an upside perspective, over the course of the last 2+ years, it's been McBride in the post-Emmanuel Quickley world. And then Cameron Payne and Shamet, it's just price plays too. 3,300, 3,100. If you get value that works for them and they get a Chicago spot, and you could, blowout run for Tibbs probably looks different than most, but there's a world where you could see them extended in games that, they're up 20 and they don't need to potentially push as much Jalen Brunson there at the end of that one. So pay attention to news. There's going to be something that really stands out here. I'm still just not sure what it is either, Spags. So I think you're probably on the right track. We're just going to be playing something here. It's just hard to put your thumb on it.
Yeah, I think the ambiguity is sort of the concern point right now. And the Anunoby being questionable too. Like, if he's out, it's just probably wheels up for all these guys to some extent.
Vooch under 3.5 assists, really popping over at Hard Rock. Seems like Hard Rock's had a lot of really nice plays. And I will say this too. I went through some of the historical ROI stuff over on Portfolio EV today. You're starting to see 7-8% HROI on a lot of these assist markets. Those have been extremely profitable with the tool. So if you're looking to tail some stuff on the screen and you're trying to parse through, I can only play like 1 or 2 of these, or you're trying to find something like this that is priced minus 140, that would be a really nice pick 'em play based on those true odds that we have projected there. Under 3.5 assists for Vooch. Those are the kind of plays you want to intertwine no matter what sportsbook you have access to, but specifically Hard Rock, man. Hard Rock, DraftKings, those ones have been just getting crushed by the tools. So shout out that Portfolio EV. We'll talk about it as we go along. But next up, anything else from that one, by the way, Spags?
No, for right now, still getting a good amount of Achua, McBride, Payne, but I think we just need clarity here to really feel confident about where that ownership's going to flow.
Clippers, now 3-point favorites. Your boy got it +1.5, got posted over on X last night. Had a feeling that one was going to look pretty good in the morning. Milwaukee, 228.5, and they could really F this entire slate up entirely. But Clippers have a Q tag of their own. Norman Powell exists. I'm going to ask you, if he ends up sitting, who benefits most?
Simmons, I think, maybe. Just getting more minutes on the wing. I on paper, I think it should be an Amir Coffey because he generally soaks up the wing minutes. But Simmons, I think, is, they gave him more run than I would have thought in the first. He only played 1 game, I think, before the break, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so like I think he could play more. Dunn would also be an option, I guess. Yeah, I don't have a lean. I would think it's one of Simmons, Dunn, or Coffee. I'd prefer it to be Simmons because I think that's a fun look, but it might not be.
We'll find out if Jordan Klein is good with the animations or not. Jordan Klein, do you want to do a nuke of the night on the deeper dive? I think you do. 30 seconds. He gave you the good one.
Yeah, I love it.
You wanted this.
Greg is just so focused in it. That's what really does it for me.
Do I have a serious face in any of these? I just can't do it.
How did he have so many shots of you from profile?
I don't know.
Or is that not you? Is that
it's
like
good to know,
AI
Brody? It's 100% me.
Is that your nose? I don't know your side nose.
Do you like it?
Yeah, no, I think
like
your
it?
side nose looks because I feel like it looks
Thank
like
you.
a little more pronounced in the nuke of the night than real side nose are.
Thank you. It's really nice.
Defending your nose. There we go.
Well, you don't have to defend it. Yeah. This is like extreme nuke of the night territory here. I absolutely love getting to James Harden in the event that you get Norman Powell out for today. We have so much ownership that is coming in on Jalen Brunson. So much. And I totally get it. But if you're talking about 1 point of deviation in single entry, if you get Norman Powell out, James Harden has a 37.5% assist rate and a 37.8% usage. 37.8 Spags. I know Kawhi Leonard is only in for half of that sample size and it drops to around 34%, but James Harden becomes a shooter in the event that Norman Powell's out on not in this lineup here today. There's going to be value that pops, but do not sleep on the opportunity. If Norman Powell's out specifically, a guy who's, routinely getting pretty large points props across the entire industry on a day in, day out basis now, James Harden is my favorite play on the slate.
I mean, you're definitely getting some leverage on Brunson ownership too with that price tag and point guard eligibility. So yeah, I get it. Look, Norman Powell's kept a 27% usage rate, even with Kawhi coming in now and starting to play more real minutes, playing above 30. So he opens up a lot of opportunity on paper. And Kevin Porter Jr. being gone too, I think has quietly mattered a little bit more for this rotation, getting more shots up.
Great shout out too. Obviously, Ben Simmons is going to stat pad, so that's a little bit of an issue to some extent, especially because 26, 27 minutes of Ben Simmons tonight. I mean, the Clippers definitely stole if they're going to get him for the rest of this season and have some health there because he can guard all 5 positions on the floor. Really good acquisition by them. Kind of went under the radar too in the aftermath of all the Luka stuff, as it should have, but. Ben Simmons playing 30 minutes a night, if that's going to be on the table for them come playoff time, oh boy, that's going to be a fun defense to pay attention to. But anything else for the Clippers? Because Kawhi Leonard definitely looks good. We got Ben Simmons as somebody who's not really pulling any ownership that you did give a shout out to there at 5,500. Don't think he'd probably be the guy for me to take shots on today in any capacity, but I do have interest in pretty much everything if you get Norman Powell out.
Yeah, I'm with you on that concept. I think everybody will look a little bit better. Simmons, I think you get a shot of him being a guy who gets really meaningful minutes. If you do get Powell out. But I'm with you. Kawhi is the one I think stands out as being intriguing. Just the fact that he can play 30 plus minutes now. The fantasy points per minute have been starting to stabilize a little bit where he initially was under 1. Actually, was under, I think, 0.9 at the start of the year. Now he's creeping up close to 1.1. So Kawhi kind of rounding into the guy that he's supposed to be. And if you get Powell out, I think Kawhi, that becomes a lot easier for him. But even if Powell's in, I think Kawhi is worth a look because the minutes are up. And I just think he's not priced for where he's going to eventually be, which is probably like a high 7s, 8K guy, I think, at this point in his career.
Malakar, member for 47 months. Can we have a pay up and value at each position? Thank you. Definitely ask live before lock. I'll make sure Jordan Klein gets that to you. Smoothie, $9.99. Do you think Nick Smith is a good play? We'll bring that up on the Charlotte side as well, but that's a pretty big super chat. Wanted to give you some love. $9.99. We appreciate you. Let's jump to the Milwaukee side where I have no idea, no clue how we even start to assess this because nothing looks interesting now. But Lillard, Andre Jackson, and Giannis Antetokounmpo all questionable. And Bobby Portis suspended because he's a bad, bad boy. He likes to take drugs, and drugs are bad. Okay. Anything from Milwaukee that you even want to touch on? Because what do we even do to talk about them now? I would play nothing right now, and I would want to play everything if Giannis and Lillard are out.
I think because of Portis being out, these guys are interesting tournament options. At least some of the guys, like Giannis, I think is worth some shots if you can get there. It's hard to pay up, and Jokic is, similarly projected at that point. But Giannis gaining actually a lot of usage in court time without Portis, 38% usage. I think it's Portis and Middleton was the split I did. A little bit more rebounding, a little more assist upside for him, like gains in every category with Portis and Middleton being off the roster. I think Giannis is worth a tournament shot. Lillard, I would have a tough time with if Giannis is in. I think Kuzma can be worth a shot as well. He's going to get a lot more minutes of the four now with Portis out and get more usage as well. He does gain a little bit of a usage uptick in court time without Portis. The big opportunity, though, is if you got Giannis and Lillard out, because then Kuzma, I think, would be your super duper chalk play and totally justifiable because limited court time without Lillard and Giannis. He's averaged 33% usage, 33% assist rate, just has been going nuts in about 75 possessions without those guys. But if they're in, I think these guys are all kind of interesting tournament plays because the total's not bad. But with the total, Eric, I feel like, and you know the betting markets as well as anybody, I feel like this seems like one of Giannis and Lillard being out if they're a 3-point dog at home. But I think one of them has to play with that total being where it is.
Yeah, and it got bet around that direction from +1.5 over to that 3. And this is just a massive line move. And the only thing that makes sense to me is that you've got Giannis more than likely to sit. So it's probably going to be the Giannis side. I do think that that brings a lot of interesting plays in, like Kyle Kuzma will look a lot better. Maybe a share of Pat Connaughton where it's not just going down to the Kevin Porter Jr. shooting guard, Rollins probably starting if it's Lillard on that side of things. But that's why we got live before lock right after this. So Milwaukee, nothing right now, potentially a ton coming up later as it would be a pretty interesting spot. Not the best matchup in the Clippers, not a pace up spot by any means, but there would be value to be had.
Yep.
Cool. Portfolio EV. Jordan Klein, 75% off. Is that what we're rocking right now? We got 75% off going for Portfolio EV. Look at all the screenshots on a day in, day out basis. It's been absolutely ridiculous. And using promo code RETURN, you can get all the plays. Obviously, I'm sharing them throughout the deeper dive with you here, along with Spags as we're going. But we got 3 games left. Pay attention to some of these top bets. We'll be able to skim over them as we go. But 75% off gives you access to the tool right now with promo code RETURN. Promo code RETURN. We're back from the All-Star break, and check out all these unbelievable screenshots from Pickett. We're talking P&Ls. That is the big hot thing that you need to be showing on a day in, day out basis over in the betting streets. And plus, well, guys like Eitan Shander, guys like Greg Ehrenberg, guys like Nathan Joyce, all the great people here utilizing Portfolio EV on a day in, day out basis and sharing you that free content over on X. Well, Portfolio EV, promo code RETURN, ready to rock. You can use it all the live long day. Right up to lock, right before lock. It is just incredible. Promo code RETURN, 75% off. Check it out right now. All right, Charlotte, ball sitting, Mark Williams sitting. Let's cover it. Now 17.5. It's funny how I kind of landed on that number last night, kind of in just 14.5 is where it opens, 17.5 as it became pretty clear what was going to happen. And now we have 2 major chalk pieces to discuss. Elf Payton, Yusuf Nurkic. You said it before this program. You're a little bit nervous as far as what's going to happen with Elf's minutes. Tell the people why.
Yeah, so basically, if you take Elfrid Payton as a player we've known for a few years, a guy who had one good game for the Pelicans this year and kind of came in, he looks like a really good play. I think at about 27, 28 fantasy points or so with the about 27 minutes that Stokastic projects him for. The issue is playing for the Hornets. He's been really terrible so far, under 10% usage, under a 6% rebound rate. The assist rate's been down at 30%. And you watch the games, and look, I watched more Hornets than I want to admit because I tend to get Miles Bridges a lot in slates, get Mark Williams on slates. He's just not doing anything out there. He's just giving the ball to everybody else. His minutes get jerked around. He plays a few. Now, granted, he shot really terribly in court time without LaMelo so far. He's averaged, I think, 18% true shooting. So theoretically, if he shoots even close to normal, he'll get more shots up. But if he is going to be potentially uber chalk on a slate, and I got him 75% the sim, I think defaulting to what my rates would be for him in Charlotte will make me get less of him and feel a little bit better about the outlook. So I would just caution if you're going to lock button Elfrid Payton today because there's no value and you're like, he's a starter, he's going to be good. I don't know that's guaranteed. And I would give the caveat that he really has been about a 0.5 fantasy point per minute guy in the court time without LaMelo and Mark Williams this year. And he's not doing a lot out there. He's just kind of a body who's on a 10-day contract. So I don't know how you feel about Elf, but he worries me a lot here. And he's going to be, I think, a play that people will just lock in and think he's a smash. And it's I don't know that he's currently that guy with how they're using him.
He played 32 minutes against Orlando without Wall. Like, it's a lot of minutes for Elf Payton.
Wasn't good results though. Wasn't great
So
results.
what do they do? Damian Bow would be the other guy. He played 27 minutes though, and that was alongside Elf Payton. I don't think they're exclusive plays. I saw somebody bring him up earlier. In fact, he was the super chat. We're running short on time, so I want to let Greg be able to handle that one. So when Jordan inevitably gets asked from Greg, what did they not answer on the last show? Whatever it is like that. I think that was a pretty good impersonation of what he sounds like in my head.
You nailed it.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely want to be checking that one out, Jordan, because bookmark it. Anyway, Yusuf Nurkic. Yeah, he played 18 minutes yesterday. Was pretty effective. Didn't even score an actual point. 7 assists, 8 rebounds. I said it when the trade happened. Well, not even the trade. Just he's going to put up numbers when he plays. It's just a question of how many minutes can he get to. He's unfortunately 4,300, and we got to think about him on this slate, Spags.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. With the 22-minute projection Stokastic's given him, he's coming up about 39% of my lineups. I think it's worth the shot. You know, he did squeeze Diabate out of the lineup as opposed to vice versa. So it does seem like he should be ahead in the pecking order. How much can those minutes get? That's the big question. But he's reducing a 1.06 fantasy point per minute pace. So on a slate with no value, I think Nurkic to me, he can honestly hit 30 fantasy points in 20 minutes, and I wouldn't be crazy at all.
And Denver back with everybody. Murray off the injury report, Porter Jr. off the injury report, Gordon off the injury report, and Russell Westbrook off the injury report. It is Jokic or nothing. It depends completely on how much other value we get. Do you have anything you want to talk about with Denver?
Now, if you can find a way to pay for Jokic, great, but hard to get there. I think that a Jokic Bridges lineup is kind of an appealing concept to me because I think Bridges looks pretty good if they somehow keep this competitive. But with the spread being where it is, back to back, playing at altitude, like this, you never want to project a blowout. If you're going to project a blowout, today's probably a day to project a blowout.
Smash that like button, please. We got to get this up over 300. This is embarrassing. I'm not doing a great job of hosting. One, we're 2 minutes away from 6 p.m. Eastern time. I'm 4 p.m. in the Mountain time. It's 3 p.m. on the Pacific. We are talking the rest of this DraftKings slate. We got 2 minutes. We're going to try to get this one going fast. We've got Phoenix, 2.5-point favorites now taking on San Antonio. The obvious news of the day, Victor Wembanyama out for the season with the blood clot in his shoulder. We hope he is okay, but the assumption is Jeremy Sohan is going to be in that starting unit. I think it is what it's supposed to be. Bismack Biyombo could end up being a potential talking point, but as for the Phoenix side, I don't really like them as additions to it for any other reason that, yeah, if I'm going to get to as many Spurs as I potentially am, maybe I want to get to a little Bol or Kevin Durant or Devin Booker, but outside of those three and just random tournament shots, I can't even make a case for a Bradley Beal at 6,200 or a 5K Tyus Jones Spags. Nothing looks all that good on the Phoenix side.
Yeah, I'm getting 5% Bol as my high man here, getting 3% and change of Kevin Durant. I think nothing stands out here. Yeah, the rotations have missing some guys. Now they're back in with Beal, Grayson Allen. Bol, I don't even think you'd expect to start at this point. If he does start, great. I think take some shots, but if he's coming off the bench, I think he's an okay play, but probably going to be overowned.
You know what's going to be incredible? Here's what we're going to do. If you get us over 400 likes before the next show, Puppet Lindquist is going to do Lakers Portland by himself. Lakers Portland by himself to round out the show. I won't say another word as soon as I say Puppet Lindquist go. So that is incentive for you to smash that like button leading into, of course, we got Matt Belman, Greg Ehrenberg coming up on Live Before Lock for you. Then the playback show going with Josh Engelman, Greg Ehrenberg. We're back in action. There's going to be tons of news. You're going to want to pay attention to it. But San Antonio side, I love just, pouring you out.
You really threw that on me.
Oh man. Yeah, no pressure. It's the bit that I hate, but I also love to hate that I also hate. So it is what it is. De'Aaron Fox, Jeremy Sohan, pulling all the ownership and all the land. I'm more okay with the Fox side, sub 8K. Assist rate, I think it's going to come down playing alongside Chris Paul. Didn't expect him to be playing as much alongside of him, but this is a San Antonio team that there's going to need to be scoring in the absence of Wemby. Who does it more for you here? Fox, Sohan, Vassell, who are you rostering from San Antonio?
I'm getting a lot of Fox here, which I worry about a little bit because he actually hasn't been as good of a per minute guy with Wemby off the court as he was in Sacramento. If you give him his Sacramento rates, though, he does look like a monster, about a 45 fantasy point projection. So I'll be with the field on Fox no matter what. I'm currently getting 61%. I'd prefer to be closer to about 50 where the field is. Vassell, I'm with the field on. Basically, everybody in the Spurs gained some usage from Wemby being off the court, but they haven't had to deal enough with Fox being off the court. The one thing I would say, which we talked about earlier, Sohan probably going to get the 5 minutes here. He's been playing backup 5. 5. They certainly could start Biyombo, but I think no matter what, you see Sochan get a good amount of those minutes. So I think he's a decent value play, getting him in 25% of my lineups. But really, to me, Vassell, Chris Paul, Sochan, they should all be probably like 15 to 25%, I think, maybe 10 to 25% owned.
Yeah, so here's the other thing. Bismack Biyombo. He's there on the 10-day contract as well. He's the Elf Payton of the San Antonio Spurs in this spot. And once you know it, he just sits there with that bargain barrel flat 3K thing staring you in the face. Mamukashvili, I think, will probably be in this rotation now going forward in some capacity, even if it's just as like a backup to Sochan, and maybe Biyombo gets boxed out. But those are 2 3K options to at least consider on the San Antonio side. Do you have any interest as of right now?
No, I don't see it so much. I mean, look, if you get a starting nod for Biyombo, you could take the shot, especially not having Bassie in. Like, that certainly gives him a decent shot at getting minutes. But if he doesn't start, I just don't see it. And I'd be surprised if he started, because he wasn't in the rotation last game. Like, Sochan played backup 5. So I wouldn't, necessarily think that much about it. But McLaughlin too, I just don't see getting minutes. So yeah, to me, the 3K guys, you feel a little bit trappy.
332 likes. Guys,
no, we didn't get there.
You didn't get there. You got 2 minutes here. We're going to turn it over to Live Before Lock. But first, unfortunately, as sad as it is, we didn't quite get there. I'm waiting. All right, it's over 350. We can do the bit. Lakers -1 taking on Portland, 224.5 total. The big news, Luka Doncic going to be out. I'm surprised that LeBron James still going to be there, but he's questionable with the rest tag. That could be ridiculous. This is the late night hammer of all hammers, and the people need to know from Puppet Lindquist. Oh, look at that. We hit 370. Yeah, that's good enough by me. Who are you targeting or potentially targeting from the Lakers side? And then cover Portland too to round out our show.
Well, LeBron James, the rate data should look pretty good for him overall. I would go, he's a contrarian play. Nobody knows this LeBron guy's good at basketball, but I've been talking about him on Puppet Lindquist, leans, lines, and locks. I do lines, give out locks every day. I think he looks pretty good, this LeBron fella, so strap on in, play some LeBron James today. Everybody else here, Austin Reeves, 2x to field feels about right. Jordan Goodwin picking up a few minutes. Maybe he's a value, maybe he's not. I don't know what to tell you. I'm just a puppet. Portland side, they're the puke of the night. I'm throwing up. I'm ill. I don't want to play Portland. DeAndre Ayton's out. They should look good, but yet they don't. So that's your puke of the night. And it's not the first time I've done this in the back of my throat, huh? Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks for hitting the like button, guys.
Yeah, the show. Chris Spags, tell the people where to find you, not Puppet Lindquist.
You can find me, the man behind Puppet Lindquist, at Splash Play NBA, 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. And yeah, good luck today, guys. Should be a fun slate. Go Chaos. Chaos is going to happen. You guys know.
That was probably better analysis from Puppet Lindquist than anything I've ever done in my entire life. Jordan Klein, thank you so much for this show and for being yourself. We got Live Before Lock coming up with Craig and Belman right now. Oh.
What is happening, everybody? This is really the start of the second half of the season. I know Josh and I came on. We did a show late last night for the single game slate between the Lakers and the Hornets last night. It was okay to have something on the schedule. This is the real slate. And that's why Matt and I are here to break it down for you guys for the next hour. And then afterwards, we're going to have the playback show. I'm going to be on with Ben Roz. It seems like we're going to have a good amount of injury news to break down. We also hopefully have some betting value to bring to you guys on the playback show. But here's what we got waiting for us on the injury report. By the way, we also just got a starting lineup, because what would this show be without just some piece of news coming out right before we're starting? Even though Eric went long because he's terrible at managing time, which Jordan told me he didn't answer all the super chats, or actually Jordan told me he didn't answer any of the super chats on the last show, which he could say it's for whatever reason he wants it to be. It's because he's no good at planning and time management. So we got to answer those. But of course, even with the show running long, we still managed to find out the Orlando Magic starting Wendell Carter Jr. over Goga Bitadze. Not something I foresaw happening, Matt. So that's something that we're going to have to touch on here at the top. But then, of course, the other piece of injury news, with every game being included on the slate on FanDuel and DraftKings today, Giannis is questionable. LeBron is questionable. Dame is questionable. Norman Powell is questionable. OG Anunoby is questionable. That's a lingering injury from before the All-Star break. Scoot Henderson questionable. Jeremy Grant questionable. Ty Jerome questionable. Robert Williams is questionable. Some of those names less impactful than the other ones, but some big names on the injury report. And we're going to walk you guys through the slate over the next couple hours. So do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Matt, what is happening? What do you make of all this injury news today?
Just another day in the NBA streets is how I take it. I mean, the day before the All-Star break was crazy. I think me and you did the show, was just insane from a news perspective. And I think tonight, while it won't be like that, it'll be similar just because it's the first day back. It's weird. You'd expect it to be less so because guys just had a week off, but the NBA will NBA, I guess, is the only way to put it.
We've got Sotex in the chat, said he got 500 likes. At least 200 of those were for the puppet. Yeah. There was probably more of those likes for puppet Eric than there was for actual Eric. But either way, really good job there by Spags to close out the show and really drive up those likes. But also have to reiterate, because Eric's in the chat all upset that Greg being a jerk. And Matt could back me up on this. Nothing I said was originally my thought. It all came straight from Jordan Klein in the in-between shows, telling me that I have to answer these questions because Eric was incapable of doing them on his own. That's exactly what happened. I didn't come out and say that. That's what Jordan told me. And he's the producer. He's the one who runs the ship around here. So we got these super chats to answer. And let's open by talking about these questions, Matt. And then we'll start to get to some of the news as it comes. We'll probably have a projections update on the Orlando Magic soon. And by the way, don't forget, second half of the season, shit's going to start to get crazy in the NBA DFS streets. We're going to start having tanking teams, sitting players left and right, and our projections team always all over it. And if you guys want the best way to sign up for our data packages or any of the other tools on the site, the links are down below in the YouTube description box. And don't forget about our link join offer, because for each one of our partners that you sign up for in that link down below, has to be through that link, you get 1 free month of core access. So if you want to close out the NBA season strong with our Sims tools, with our projections, with our ownership, our late swap tool, sign up for 2, 3 of these books, and it is going to cover your NBA subscription through the remainder of the season. Link down below in the YouTube description box. We got a really good one to start out with here. I think this gives us a good overview of the slate to get going. Malukar wants to know, can we have a pay up and a value at each position? And thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So here's how I think is a pretty good way to go about doing this, Matt. I've got lineups built out here for DraftKings as well as FanDuel. How about I'll answer for the FanDuel side, you answer on the DraftKings side, and we'll go back and forth. So I'll start here. I'll say my favorite value at the point guard position on FanDuel is Elfrid Payton. You give me your favorite value at the point guard position on DraftKings.
It's going to be the same guy, Elf Payton.
Yeah. I mean, I know that his fantasy performance has been a little bit underwhelming. I liked him as a contrarian option last night in the showdown slate. I wouldn't have been playing him in that situation if it was a full slate. But here's the reality. The Charlotte Hornets don't have LaMelo Ball tonight. And on top of it, they seem to like playing Elfrid Payton. For whatever reason, he seems to be the guy they're prioritizing. So last night, Josh and I were talking about the point guard minutes. And at first, we're like, how confident can we be that Elfrid Payton's going to get minutes? They've got younger guys like Simpson and Bow that they could potentially give playing time to. And then the inactives come out 15 minutes before the game, and Simpson and Bow are both inactive So they really like Peyton, at least for now, for whatever reason, as their guy who they want on the court when LaMelo Ball isn't on the court. So I assume Elf starts, plays pretty good minutes today. Will he produce? It's a tough matchup against Denver, so potentially not. But I think he's the best overall value play on the slate on FanDuel and DraftKings. So for me, on the cheap end, I'm going to go with Elf at point guard. If I'm paying up at point guard, that is going to be De'Aaron Fox on FanDuel.
For me, it's going to be a bunch of ways to go here. I'll say Jalen Brunson is the top spend up point guard.
At shooting guard, if I'm looking to save some salary, not quite as many great options to go to, but I'll go to Jordan Goodwin today. Lakers are shorthanded. There's no Luka today. Also potential for LeBron to sit. I don't know. The LeBron one's really tough for me to figure out what to make of because it's a tail end of a back-to-back. They also lost a tough game last night where they really should have won. Their massive favorites. We were talking about potential blowout risk with the Lakers being such big favorites. But if the Lakers do end up resting LeBron, I think we really, really see the C squad out there for them. So I'm going to go Jordan Goodwin at $4,100 for my pay down option. How about yourself?
I'm going to go with Campaign. You could also go with Miles McBride. Don't love either. I like your Goodwin shout out. I think he's in play even if LeBron plays just because no Luka. But yeah, for right now, I'll say that Campaign is my cheap guy, and then my spend up guy will be Austin Reeves.
Yeah, Austin Reeves is my spend up as well. I mean, he already looks good, but then if you get the potential for LeBron to be out in addition to Luka, then Reeves just becomes such a top play on the slate. So Austin Reeves for me at the shooting guard position. If I'm paying down at small forward on FanDuel, but I have to be honest, it's kind of nobody. The cheap small forward options are horrific on FanDuel. I'll throw out Jonathan Isaac because he's a better scorer from a fantasy perspective with FanDuel scoring than DraftKings scoring. Maybe Goga Bitadze going to the bench completely overhauls what it is that the Orlando Magic do with their front court rotations. And Jonathan Isaac, in my opinion, he actually is the best center on Orlando. The problem is just that he's had so many injuries that he can't handle that big of a workload. But it seems like they're mixing stuff up. And we did see last year in the playoffs, Jonathan Isaac was a go-to guy for the Orlando Magic, so maybe they start ramping up down the tail end of the season. I only have him in 12% of lineups right now, but like I said, the cheap small forward options, terrible on FanDuel. So I'll go John Isaac. Yourself, cheap at small forward for DK?
Yeah, don't love the options on DK either, but if forced to choose, I'll go Nick Smith. Shooting guard or small forward eligibility helps his cause, obviously, for this conversation. He's in it because of that, but 4,500, no LaMelo, no Mark Williams. I think he's a fine play.
And then at small forward, if I'm paying up, I'm going to go with Kawhi Leonard here. $7,200 coming off the All-Star break. Potential for Norman Powell not to be out there. I know he isn't super expensive, $7,200 Kawhi Leonard, so maybe it doesn't quite fit the bill as a pay-up option, but I think he's underpriced at $7,200. So I'm going to go with Kawhi here. Pay up for you at small forward?
I like what you did there because I was thinking about Kawhi and how he looks really good here. And sometimes this question, you know, it doesn't account for the mid-tier. Sometimes the best plays are just in the mid-tier, like Kawhi is tonight. Because you said Kawhi already, I'm going to go with LeBron. I love him if he's in, and I don't think he's going to get a ton of love.
At power forward, if I'm looking to go cheap, that's going to be Dorian Finney-Smith, only $3,900 over on FanDuel. I think he's the best looking value option at that spot. And then once again, would look even better if LeBron's ruled out. For yourself, cheap at power forward?
I'll go Jeremy Sohan, 4,500. Could potentially be starting at center with no Wemby. I mean, they have Biyombo and Mamu, but we don't know what their plans are, especially against a team that, you know, isn't necessarily committed to going big with a center. So I think Sohan looks pretty good at 4,500.
If I'm paying up at power forward on FanDuel, I'll go Miles Bridges as a contrarian option. Just a lot of risk here, a lot of potential for blowout. He could certainly not end up playing the fourth quarter, but at modest ownership at $8,200 without Ball out there, I'm going to go with Miles Bridges as my pay-up option at power forward. How about DK pay-up at power forward for you?
I'll go a little bit off the board here and say KD. I mean, I really want to say LeBron, but I already used him at small forward. I was a little bit stupid in doing that, but I like KD here. He's a nice pivot off of LeBron if we find out LeBron's off. And, you know, I guess you give him a little bit bump for this game being played at the University of Texas, you know, where he played in college. So there's that.
All right. And then at center for me, cheap side. Now that he's starting, we haven't touched on this piece yet, but Wendell Carter Jr. is $4,600 on FanDuel, was moved into the starting lineup. Pretty decent matchup here against the Atlanta Hawks, at least in terms of pace for Orlando. So I'm going to go Wendell Carter Jr. for cheap at center on FanDuel. Cheap center for you on DK?
He also looks good on DK. He's cheaper than Nurk, 4,100. Because you said him, I'll say Nurkic, but I think that's a conversation we should have like after this, like Carter Jr. or Nurkic.
Yeah. And then right after this, I think the projections are probably updated now. So we'll go ahead and we'll give a look at the projections after we give out our favorite pay up options at center. For me, that's going to be Cat over on FanDuel.
Yeah. I guess I'll say Cat looks really good on DK. I'll say Jokic because always Jokic, especially if we have a ton of value.
All right. So now with that in mind, if you wouldn't mind, Jordan, could you pull up the projections and let's look at the Orlando Magic, because we've got a piece of news here that Matt and I talked about briefly at the top. And here's what we have going on here. Orlando Magic, new starting center for them. They have put Goga Bitadze back to a bench role. We've got Wendell Carter Jr. moving into the starting lineup, and he's cheap. He's $4,100 over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we got Wendell Carter Jr. at $4,600. We gave him a 26-minute projection, which I think has potential to go higher. It's a pretty modest projection. I'm not saying it's wrong or anything like that, but my point is that if you're telling me that there's an over-under for 26 minutes on Wendell Carter Jr., I think he's probably more likely to go over that mark than he would be to go below it. So I think there's a little bit more of an upside there than even gets indicated. And he still is rating out as a top value play on the slate, Matt, at $4,100 with a 25.2 fantasy point projection, right around a fantasy point per minute. And once again, a chance that we see 30 minutes from Wendell Carter Jr. I think he looks really strong here on the slate, both FanDuel and DraftKings. What do you make of Wendell Carter Jr. and the new look lineup here for Orlando?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard not to like Wendell Carter Jr. now. I mean, it's a great matchup. He's so cheap, like for his upside, man. I hate this because center position was already looking really good, and I really don't want to lock in early players if I can help it. I'm only playing one lineup, but he might look unavoidable. The top, like, I ran a little, I pushed up the stakes and stuff and messed with the Sims a little bit, and like all the top lineups for my contest settings have Carter in them. So I think that kind of tells you all you need to know,
Yeah, I'm about to rerun lineups now that we have everything updated on the site, and I don't know what to expect. I'm really interested here in terms of the amount of exposure that I get to Wendell Carter Jr. But if you go to our projections, Jordan, don't even filter by a team. Just have all the teams selected. Yeah, and sort by value there, points per dollar. Either one's fine. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Yeah, we got Wendell Carter Jr. Now, overall, at least in terms of the value metric that we have there, Wendell Carter Jr. 4th overall. And then if you sort by points per dollar, Jordan. Yeah, and if you look points per dollar, number 1 play on the slate on a points per dollar basis relative to Nurkic, which is why I wanted to look at this, Max. I thought this was a good point you brought up. We've got Nurkic here for 25.92 fantasy points. We've got Wendell Carter Jr. 25.24. Nurkic also $200 more expensive. Certainly more blowout risk in the Hornets game as well. I'm looking at these guys as being very, very comparable options. And I'm not exactly sure if you pull up the ownership here, Jordan. I think I'm probably going to be pretty split between them, maybe a little bit of a lean towards Wendell Carter Jr. But earlier, and by earlier, I mean the last run that I did like 10 minutes ago, I would have told you that Nurkic pretty clearly for me, the top value center option on the slate. Now I am thinking, let's see. Oh, yeah, we got Wendell Carter Jr. lower owned than Nurkic. Yeah, relative to ownership, I prefer Wendell Carter Jr. to Nurkic now, Matt.
Yeah, same. I mean, honestly, if you told me they were going to be the same owned, I would prefer Carter Jr., I think. I think he's just safer than Nurkic in their respective spots. They both look really good, though. So couldn't fault anyone for playing one over the other or just playing both in any given line.
Yeah, for sure. I think 2 top value options on the slate. You can definitely utilize both of them in the same lineup. Let's see what it is that we have for other super chats that Eric was incapable of getting to. 2 of them here sitting for us, and then we'll go into the Discord channel as well. And if you guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. A lot of news coming today, so join us on playback after the show locks, or after the show ends and the slate locks in 39 minutes. Smoothie 1 says, do you think Nick Smith is a good play at $4,500? Would you recommend a different small forward? Also, do you think Bow is a sneaky pivot off of Peyton? If not, okay. So there's a lot of different aspects to this question. Let's read it line by line, because also I'm going to forget what the start of it was by the time we get to the rest of it. So the first part is, do you like Nick Smith tonight at $4,500, Matt?
I mentioned him as the best cheap small forward option. So if you need a cheap small forward, I like him. I don't really love him just in general, though. No.
Yeah. So especially now that with Wendell Carter Jr. as an option, it seems just kind of reading into the way Smoothie framed this question. I think that Nick Smith is certainly a viable piece on this slate, but he's not. If I'm playing one lineup, Nick Smith isn't in it. He's $4,500. We just got a better value option that opened up in Wendell Carter Jr. I'd rather play him in the utility spot over Nick Smith. So he's in play. If I'm playing a single lineup, if I'm playing 3 lineups, he's probably not in any of them. I'd have to be playing 10 plus lineups before I start to get exposure to Nick Smith. I've got him in a little bit more than 10% of my lineups in my last run, and that's probably going to go down as opposed to up as more news breaks.
I don't even really like him, but I do think I like him slightly more than you, just in the sense that I would never go out of my way to play him in one lineup here. But if I had 4,500 left at small forward, I wouldn't mind playing him. And I think it's like doing him a little bit of an injustice comparing him to like Carter and Nurkic, because obviously you'd rather play those guys, but he has small forward eligibility. So it's a little bit of a different combo. But to your point, I'm not looking to play him like at all.
And then the other part of the question that we got here is, do we think Bow is a sneaky pivot off of Peyton? Is that an angle that you're willing to look at tonight, Matt? Because Elfrid Payton, he's going to be a chalk option on the slate. He's expected to be massively popular. Bow is not. He was also inactive last night. So is he somebody who you would consider as a pivot off of a chalky Elf Payton?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm kind of skeptical of the whole Charlotte situation, just with like KJ Simpson and Diabate not even playing last night. Like, was this a situation where maybe these guys are going to start tonight because they knew that LaMelo and Mark Williams weren't going to play? It's not like LaMelo and Mark Williams got hurt. This was clearly planned. I'm skeptical of Charlotte. So if Elf is starting, I think Baugh is like a 150 GPP pivot. But all of a sudden, if Baugh is starting, then yeah, you clearly want to get to him. And maybe he's less owned than he should be because of that extra $100.
It really gives me pause that not only was he inactive last night, but he hasn't been playing a ton otherwise either. I want to see the Hornets starting lineup. As of right now, he's a no for me, though. There are other.
I think he'd have to be starting. I think he'd have to be starting for me to want to play him and have confidence he's in the rotation.
Which it could happen, right? I'm not going to, I don't think it's the most likely outcome, but as of right now, with us not projecting that to be the case, it's a no for me. We've got Bow projected for, and here's something also, and there are always reasonable ways you can make pivots or go to contrarian options, but it's a slate where we've got some value opening up. More of it is likely to come as we move on throughout the night. We've got them projected for 7 fantasy points. There's a certain point where the projection is really tough for me to overlook.
Yeah, I agree with you. For me, the answer to this question is if I was looking to get away from Elf, I just wouldn't play Elf. I don't think you have to play Baugh.
Yeah, totally reasonable way to look at it. You could just play this game as if it's going to be a blowout, and you could ignore the Charlotte side, and you could just play other value pieces elsewhere. As of right now, Bow is a no for me. And then he wants to know, are there any other $4,000 to $4,200 guards that we like? All right, so I'm assuming this means outside of Elf Payton, who are the guards that we like getting to on DraftKings in that $4,000 to $4,200 range as a potential pivot? I've got one.
I don't have many. I mean, I think McBride and Campaign, the Knicks guys, are like the best options. But for me, I guess like, I don't know. I just think that I would build differently if I were looking to get away from Elf than go to a direct pivot. I don't really see any guys I like directly. Who's your guy?
Drew Holiday's $4,400 and not pulling ownership today. Like I know that he's the 6th option on the Celtics now, something like that. I don't know off the top of my head what all the usage rates are. I assume he's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 6th with the other 4 starters and then Peyton Pritchard being ahead of him. But he is $4,400. Nobody is playing him. It's a matchup against a 76ers team that's been massively disappointing this year as well. I think Drew Holiday is an overlooked piece on the slate. Like, think about a slate where players were out and yet you had Drew Holiday was thrust into a starting lineup at $4,400. We otherwise weren't expecting him to start. And while I have more exposure to Peyton than I have to Drew Holiday is point guard and shooting guard eligibility. There's only $400 difference between them. Like, should Peyton really be 5x the ownership of Drew Holiday? That's a really big gap. And Drew Holiday is clearly the better basketball player.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would question whether he's the better basketball player. I'm with you there. Yeah, I mean, listen, $4,400 Drew Holiday. I feel like that's about as cheap as he'll ever be. A little bit of a price difference to your point, but like also to your point, yeah, I think that if you have the money, pivoting to Drew Holiday makes sense. I'm with it.
Yeah, so that there's a pivot I like. I know it's not exactly in the price range he gave us there. I went a couple $100 more expensive. So I'm kind of trying to find something that's in the neighborhood of what he asked while also being somebody I actually like, as opposed to trying to force somebody in that I didn't like to answer the question. But I think Drew Holiday, pretty reasonable pivot there. Then we've got See You Looking, wants to know Nurkic or Sohan on FanDuel for utility. I'm kind of confused now. Oh, okay. So we just got a very bizarre update from the Milwaukee Bucks, Matt. Giannis and Dame are both playing, but they're playing limited minutes.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
I think you just can't touch the Milwaukee Bucks.
I agree with you. The only guy I can see playing, and this is another elf pivot, is Kevin Porter Jr.
Yeah, maybe, but the last time we saw Dame out, Porter didn't even start. He didn't play a ton of minutes. He was still behind Ryan Rollins in the rotation.
Yeah, I'm
maybe
not
I'll
excited
have a
about
couple
it.
of guys show up, but once again, for like the most, for the majority of our listeners that are just going to be playing a couple of lineups, I think it's best to just avoid Milwaukee.
I agree.
But what does limited minutes even mean for these guys? Also, don't forget, this is a Jesse Morse level doctor that's coaching the Milwaukee Bucks here, just a total fraud. So it's like, what do his words even mean? Like, I don't know. What do limited minutes mean from Glenn Rivers?
Couldn't tell you.
32 is like kind of limited for Giannis and Dame.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, is limited minutes like, why would they play them like 15 minutes? Like, it would make no sense. So yeah, like I still think they play like around 30 minutes each.
Boy, I wish we had more. That's the other thing too, is it's so hard to put a number on what it actually, like, because it's so vague, limited. I feel best to just look at other guys.
Totally agree.
All right, we got a super chat here from. All right, here we go. I was a little confused about this because See You Looking asked us Nurkic or Sohan for FanDuel utility, and I was thinking, like, what is he playing where there's a utility spot on FanDuel? He followed up with another message and said that it's for DraftKings. Okay, so if we're looking in the utility spot, my answer is going to be Nurkic. That would changes to Sohan if he's starting. I just don't know what the starting lineup is going to be for San Antonio, because the last time Wemby was out, and now obviously he's going to be out for the rest of the season, I thought that Sohan was going to start at center. That didn't end up being the case. And then they went with a bunch of different guys that played center minutes. So I don't know. It's also so different because this isn't a one-off game. This is long-term that Wemby's going to be out. So once again, if Sohan starts, he's my answer, but I'm pretty iffy on if he's going to start or not. So I'm going to go with Nurkic. Although, like you said before, maybe Nurkic doesn't even start.
Yeah, I'm with you though. Like, I think your analysis is right on there. There's a lot of unknowns to answer that question right now. I think that if they both start, man, if they both start, it's really close. It's hard for me to answer that.
If they both start, it's Sohan for me. If one of them starts and the other comes off the bench, it's whoever starts. So
I agree with you. I'll agree with you on both there.
As of right now, I'll say Nurk, though. Eric Gallegos left us a super chat. There is no question attached to it. So let me see. Eric, if you do have a question for us, no need to leave another super chat. Just throw it into the YouTube chat, and I am on the lookout for whatever question it is that you have right there. For the people who are wondering, because I saw somebody ask, what has happened to Wemby? He has a deep vein thrombosis. It's actually pretty serious. So a blood clotting issue for him in his shoulder, which, not that I think this is the case, but in bad scenarios, it can be life-threatening. So, yeah, pretty serious illness that Wemby is dealing with. Apparently started to feel some symptoms leading into the All-Star break. He thought the time off, he'd start to feel better. Didn't feel better. Gets evaluated, finds out he's got this blood clotting issue. So, yeah, hopefully Wemby is good to go for next year. From what's been reported, they think this is just a one-off thing. This isn't going to be a recurring issue, and they think with the time off, they're going to be able to get him healthy. And yeah, June Sosa in chat said Brandon Ingram had the same issue. Yeah, there's been a handful of players. We've seen Brandon Ingram had it. And then I remember there was a handful of other ones from previous years as well. But yeah, hopefully he ends up being okay because he's probably the best prospect that we've seen since LeBron. Chris Albers wants to know, who is your top GPP blowout run play for Charlotte and Denver? It's a big enough slate. I'm not looking to play anybody specifically for blowout run. Like for Elfrid Payton could play point guard and blowout run for all we know.
Yeah, I mean he's only on a 10-day contract. They might get rid of him after this 10 days. So like they don't care about throwing him out there for big minutes. Like maybe he's not out there, but maybe he is. We don't know. That's why like I'm not really all that interested in whoever's not starting for Charlotte because there might be guys that get there, but it's going to be really hard to predict. Where the guys that start are starting, and then hell, to your point, like they might be in and blowout run also. So I'm in on the starters for Charlotte, at least a couple of them.
All right, let's see. Do we have a projection update here? Norman Powell was just ruled out, so that's something to touch on. I also wanted to look at our projected minutes here. We ended up going with 32 to Giannis, 32 to Dame, and both of them look pretty poor in 32 minutes. In 32 minutes, we got Giannis at 52 fantasy points. We got Dame at 38.5. At their price tags and some of the other options on the slate, and their minutes could even go lower than 32. I guess Rivers could just be totally lying, and he could just end up playing them full minutes. I'll be looking to go elsewhere, especially because Dame is $9,500. But then also with them being in, like Kuzma doesn't look quite as good. Brook Lopez doesn't look quite as good. Even Bobby Portis out of the mix. This Milwaukee situation just seems like a total mess to me, Matt. And if you look at our projections on them, we don't have a single player even projected for 5x their salary. So best to avoid, once again, just circling back on that. But any further thoughts now that you see our projections with Giannis and Dame each in for 32 minutes?
No, because the thing is, it's not even a good spot for Milwaukee. Like the Clippers aren't a team you really want to target. So I'm totally with you.
All right, let's talk about Norman Powell being out. And he was questionable. We knew this was a pretty good chance this would end up playing. One of the things that's maybe a little bit comical about this in hindsight is, remember, people were all up in arms, I think rightfully so, that LeBron showed up to the All-Star game and announced he wasn't going to play last minute.
Oh, yeah. Powell.
The reason people were upset is because it meant that Norman Powell wasn't going to be able to play in the All-Star game. Now you see that he was questionable and downgraded. I don't know that Norman Powell was physically able to play in the All-Star game now in hindsight because he can't play today coming off of the break. So that also, maybe this is information we didn't know that factored into LeBron not pulling out of the game, because maybe they knew that Norman Powell wasn't going to be able to play in that game and there just wasn't a viable replacement. But Norman Powell out today for the Clippers. What does that change for you, if anything, from the Los Angeles side of this game against Milwaukee?
It doesn't change a ton. I already liked Kawhi. 7,100 for him is just a good price if he's going to play close to the 34 minutes he just played. He projects for 36 plus fantasy points. A nice projection for 7K. He's got upside there. Certainly can get you 40 plus here. At that price point, it's a really good day. So he looks good. He looks better without Powell, because Powell he doesn't do a lot, but he's a really good scorer. So he just, opens up more shooting and scoring volume for everyone else when he's out. So I think the only guy I really have confidence in is Kawhi. Zubac's price looks good and the tools like him, but I can't get there in one lineup. Center position is way too loaded, and I'm worried about Zubac's minutes now with Ben Simmons off the bench. I mean, Simmons played a lot in his first game, cut into Zubac's minutes. They're not opposed to not playing Zubac down the stretch if the matchups call for him not to play. So I'm a little bit weary of Zubac like every day, I think going forward, but his $7,500 price tag does like leave some meat on the bone. So like I get it if you're playing a ton of lineups, but for me, it's only Kawhi.
And we got the starting lineup in advance. Look at that. Law Murray tweeting out the expected starters here for the Los Angeles Clippers. When do we get starters this early for a game? But happy to have it. So we do have Chris Dunn and Amir Coffey are both going to be entering the starting lineup. Chris Dunn, $4,200. Amir Coffey, only $3,800. Earlier, when we were asked about somebody in the $4,000 to $4,200 range as a pivot off of Elfrid Payton at the guard spot, I think Chris Dunn serves that utility now, Matt.
I agree. I will say it makes me like Kawhi even more because Dunn and Powell like don't do like they're not eating up usage. So it's Kawhi, Harden, and Zubac. Kawhi at 7,100 looks like a really strong play. You already called him out earlier. He already looked like the best small forward play, arguably, and the Powell news just solidifies that.
Yeah, I think Kawhi Leonard for sure, especially now that we're getting into the second half of the season where, listen, Kawhi's not going to be the guy who plays 40 minutes anymore. That's not a thing for him at this point in his career. But I do think he's somebody who's going to be playing over 30 minutes as long as he stays healthy the rest of the season. And now you've also got Norman Powell, a top scorer for the Clippers, coming off the court. I think they could lean on him a little bit more on offense. Kawhi's still a very efficient player. I think that he's underpriced for what his role is going to be going forward. And by the way, I mean underpriced if Norman Powell is in going forward for what he's going to be. And now you're taking Norman Powell out. Kawhi is going to be somebody who I'm definitely going to be wanting to get to. Let's see what our projections end up looking like. Not quite updated yet. When it is, we'll pull those back up on screen. And I see that we got a follow-up to that super chat from Eric. He wants to know, is Seth Curry a good option at $3,300? Not really. If he starts, that would be a different consideration for you, but I assume he comes off the bench and plays somewhat limited minutes.
Yeah, I'm good on him.
Yeah, there's been times where he's started and he's been really popular and done poorly. There's been a couple of games where people didn't get to him and he ended up going pretty well. I think there's better value options to get to. Assuming he comes off the bench, he won't be in my lineups today. If he starts, maybe he'll be in like a couple lineups, but nothing really all that significant. Getting into the questions from our Discord channel, from our subs. And once again, if you guys want to sign up for any packages, link down below in the YouTube description box. We've got our link join offer, which not only applies to the DFS side, but also you could use our link join offer and take advantage of that to get a free month of Portfolio EV. And if you want to sign up for Portfolio EV, you could also take advantage of our current ongoing promo, 75% off with the promo code return. This is because the NBA returning from the All-Star break. So tons of bets on the board today. I think I placed, I'd have to look at my picket, but something like 150 bets already today. And I'll be placing more while Ben and I are on the playback show afterwards. And 75% off, promo code return. This offer is only going to be good through Sunday. So take advantage of it now, guys. We had a lot of our customers killing it using the Portfolio EV tools. The way I've been thinking about this, Matt, is Portfolio EV and top-down betting. I look at it as the cash games of 2025. They're pretty difficult to beat, just conventional DFS cash games at this point. They haven't been completely solved, but they're pretty efficient. Whereas this is a way that you could pretty safely build a bankroll. And if you're going to be volume betting, even if you're limited, being able to get down, like for me, 100, 150 bets per day, even if the bets are only like $10 to $20 a piece because of limits, no big deal. I'm still able to get a pretty good amount of volume down and pretty consistent gains there as well. So promo code return, use that link down below in the YouTube description box to go sign up. And all right, let's see if we got a projections update. We did just now. So Jordan, throw this on screen. The Los Angeles Clippers. And let's look at what their updated projections are looking like. And then we could get to the rest of the questions in Discord. Yeah, let's sort by the Clippers. And then hopefully this is the last time that we're going to have to update our lineups heading into lock. But here's what we got. Harden, Kawhi. We got Harden in for 48.3 fantasy points. Kawhi for 39.1. So strong projection on Kawhi. And honestly, Matt, I think if I'm not getting a good amount of Kawhi, which I think I will at this projection, I'm going to boost him even more in the Sims after this. Then we got Zubac at 38.11. The cheaper guys, Chris Dunn, Amir Coffey. Neither I'm projecting out all that well. We only have Chris Dunn in for 24 minutes, though. Potentially plays a little bit more. And then that would be something that, you know, if he's playing like 30-ish minutes, then you're getting a projection from him in like the mid 20-ish range, and then he would look a little bit better. I'm a little surprised how poorly Chris Dunn and Amir Coffey are projecting. So I think I'll probably end up with a little bit less of them than I previously thought. But what are your overall thoughts on this Clippers update?
Yeah, just Kawhi for me still. Like, I can't play Chris Dunn or Coffee on this slate with the value we have earlier and later. We've seen Chris Dunn get there, but he doesn't play big minutes at all. And Coffee just doesn't do enough when they have guys in. So I'm not overly interested in those guys. It's really just Kawhi for me, and that's it.
All right, let's go ahead and look at the Discord because I see we got some questions coming in here. First, Einstein, he wants to know thoughts on Embiid as a pay-up option. Matt, who do you like paying up for today? Is it Joel Embiid or is it somebody else as a top pay-up option for you?
It's definitely not Joel Embiid. He locks early. I have no confidence in him. I like LeBron at 10-2, presuming he's in. I like Jokic always. Towns looks great at 9-7. I'll say my favorite is LeBron if he's in. I mean, he's a guy that's been, a rare anomaly in that back-to-backs has been never a problem for him. If he plays, I expect full go Bron and no Luka. So he's my favorite spend up at 10-2.
Okay. Yeah, I have no issue with that at all. As far as Joel Embiid goes, we did get a little bit of a different looking starting lineup for the 76ers today. Quentin Grimes in the starting lineup. He's fairly expensive, though, so he's not all that interesting. Just a tough matchup for Joel Embiid against the Boston Celtics. Joel Embiid has also said he's going to need another knee surgery in the offseason. He feels like a ticking time bomb to me. I'm honestly getting terrified, Matt, of playing Embiid heavily on some of these slates because he's going to leave some of these games early. It's not good when you see him. He's constantly limping. Like I said, he's already said that he is going to require another knee surgery in the offseason here. We've got guys who are cheaper that are projecting better than him. I'd rather play Cat at center. We got James Harden. I know it's a different position, but center's a real premium spot. Point guard's a little bit harder to fill, and we've got Harden projecting better at $600 less. I don't foresee myself getting to very much of Embiid here. And then also, like you mentioned, it's a game where he locks early and we lose some flexibility.
I could never play Embiid here in one lineup. Like, I could just not do it. No way. If I were playing 150 and he showed up in 0 lineups, I wouldn't be mad about it. Now, he's going to be low owned. Like, that's the one thing I feel like he has going for him. It's Joel Embiid at low ownership. I did the show with Lindquist, like his first game back, when he was only supposed to play 30 minutes and he ended up playing like 36 and smashed. You might get one of those games every 10 games, but I'm not paying my money to see it.
That's how I see it as well. Next question here. We have Krebsy wants to know thoughts on Ja Morant for today. How about Ja Morant? Is he a contrarian option you could see yourself getting to?
Yeah, it's hard to get there over Jalen Brunson, who just projects better and is cheaper. But if you told me at the end of the night Ja Morant outscored Jalen Brunson, I don't think anyone would be shocked. I mean, it's Ja Morant. First game off the break against Indiana. That said, Brunson's the better play and 100 cheaper.
Let's see. So Ja Morant for today. The one thing about Morant is I keep thinking one of these games, he's just going to play a really substantial amount of minutes. The problem with his upside is they've been so cautious with his playing time. Maybe coming out of the All-Star break, down the tail stretch of the season, things could change a little bit. We've also got Ja Morant, $8,500, pretty modest price point for his upside. I like him more than Embiid as a contrarian play.
I'll totally agree with you there. Like, I have confidence that Morant is going to finish this game.
Yeah.
I cannot say the same about Embiid.
How many games does Joel Embiid not finish in the second half of the season?
I don't know, but that one day where I was like, I took third in that GPP, I had Embiid and he like didn't come back in even in a closer game. So like, he's always live just to like lose minutes because of it's getting blowout-y or they don't, whatever. Like I'm not playing Embiid here.
All right, I'm running my final update prior to lock, run everything through the Sims with the Clippers update to let you guys know if anything really significantly changes for me in that update. In the interim, the next question here, it is from Coach DFS. And he wants to know who the cash game locks are for today. Let's see. So players who I think you absolutely need to be playing in cash games today. Peyton, Brunson, De'Aaron Fox, Cat. If he starts Sohan, I'll say those are the locks. Anybody you'd add to that?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Elf, Fox, Brunson, those guys. Yeah. It can obviously change with guys getting ruled out. So as of now, I think it's important to say.
And the next question here, M Grizzly wants to know, anybody I'm boosting tonight or anybody I'm manipulating in preparation for with the late news? So the one thing that's nice is since we've already gotten this Clippers news, that'll help backload my lineups a little bit. But here is what we are still waiting on for you guys. So as far as players go that are questionable, we've got LeBron still questionable. That's an important one. OG Anunoby. So I saw earlier some people asking what the starting lineup is going to be for the Knicks. Is it going to have Precious Achiuwa? It depends if OG Anunoby is in or out for today. We've got Scoot Henderson questionable. We've got Jeremy Grant questionable. The one that's most important here is LeBron. And I really don't know what to make of that questionable status for him. They already ruled. I have to think he's a little bit more likely to play than sit, though. Like, if they already ruled out Luka for rest, why are you not ruling out LeBron for rest at the exact same time? So, once again, like, not uber confident in this, but I do think LeBron a little bit more likely to play than sit. So, I'm going to be boosting Kawhi. But outside of that, I don't think I have to do too much to backload my lineups. How about yourself, Matt?
I also think LeBron plays. Nothing more than kind of what you said. Also, they lost last night against, in a game they clearly should have won, as you mentioned. They don't want to fall and lose this game as well. And LeBron is a different sort of beast, and he's played back-to-backs his entire career. I think he's going to play here. I think that you're right. If they were going to sit him, they would have just sat him. Wouldn't shock me if he's out, but that's just my opinion.
I will say my hope is that the Lakers lose and they keep losing, because here's what I want to happen. This is my dream scenario. Somehow we get the Mavericks versus the Lakers in a must-win play-in game, because that would just be the best in terms of storylines. It would also be a really entertaining game. So that's kind of what I hope happens. So we'll see. We'll see. My expectation, though, really is that LeBron ends up playing today. Let's see. Were there no other super chats? So let's go ahead. Oh, actually, Justin did ask again about FanDuel value options. I know we hit on that before, but after I'm done updating lineups here, I'll get to Dustin's question. I'll run through that again for FanDuel. But Zach Attack wants to know, Finney Smith, a good power forward option on FanDuel? Yes, absolutely. So Dorian Finney-Smith is somebody who I really like, as even assuming LeBron plays, I think Dorian Finney-Smith looks good. But then in a scenario where if LeBron was to potentially sit, that would only make him look better. But yeah, long story short, I think that he does look good for today. Matt, anything to add about Dorian Finney-Smith?
No, I think he's a fine fill-in option at 4,200 on DK.
All right. So getting back to Dustin's question, we wanted to know top value plays at each position for FanDuel. I'll run through this quickly here. Elfrid Payton at point guard. At shooting guard for me, that is going to be Jordan Goodwin. But once again, shooting guard, pretty thin position for cheap options on FanDuel. At small forward, if I'm going to be looking to go cheap, another one where it's pretty thin, but John Isaac. Power forward, Dorian Finney-Smith. And then center, Wendell Carter Jr. It's my top cheap option for the center spot over on FanDuel. The Black Mamba wants to know, why are we not assuming Diabate starts? Yeah, so the reason is because the last game that Mark Williams was out, where we had Nurkic available, Nurkic started.
Yeah, I'm not going to be shocked either way, though. Like, I project Nurkic to start, but, like, nothing would shock me here. Like, they're not playing for anything. Clearly, they're not necessarily prioritizing winning this game by not playing LaMelo and Mark Williams. We'll see what they do. I also am with you, though. That's what they did last time. We have no reason to suspect they'll do otherwise.
He was a DNP coach's decision last night, Diabate. Doesn't mean he can't go back into the starting lineup, but like he was so far removed from the rotation, he didn't even play last night. So to me, we're just trying to figure out, and these games don't mean shit to the Hornets. So it's not like these are high consequence decisions. When you consider the guy wasn't even in the rotation last night, you have to assume logically the guy who was in the rotation is more likely to start than the guy who wasn't in the rotation.
Totally.
J12 for Heisman wants to know anyone we plan on boosting for flexibility. Yeah, Kawhi Leonard, mentioned him before. Mr. Coolcamp, favorite players at each position for FanDuel. Touched on that one. Another one that we just touched on, cash game must-haves. Another one, cash game plays. Let's see. Okay, the Black Mamba. Favorite values on the slate at this point who are not Elfrid Payton or Wendell Carter Jr., Matt?
Good question. Elf Payton. I mean, Nurk obviously is the right answer there. I'm going to go a little bit more expensive. A guy that I think is falling through the cracks in a big way now, especially with Carter. He's more expensive, but I still think he's a great value. Donovan Clingan, especially if you get Robert Williams out. The Lakers are awful inside. We saw Clingan's last game before the break in Denver put up a monster scoreline. Like, he's a guy that can put up DK points in a hurry. And I think his ownership is going to be much smaller than the guys that are 1,000 cheaper than him. So I'm going to say him.
I feel like I'm getting trolled here. JT Mack, cash game must-haves. Josh plays DFS, cash game must-haves. They got like the same question 5 or 6 times. It might be, I don't know. I can't even tell. Are these trolls or is this a legitimate question? Because did just touch on that one. Smitch 926 wants to know Nuke of the night. And yeah, Jordan, run the animation. Let's play the Nuke of the night here before we head out. There we go. All right, Matt. High stakes. Eric isn't here, which means, if Eric, did you see that picture of Adolis Garcia that went viral the other day?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah. Well, that's what happens to Eric after he has one decent Nuke of the night option. That's what happens. He comes out, he looks like the alien from American Dad. If he hits one of his Nuke of the night. So you got some big shoes to fill here, Matt. You're doing live before lock with me. We had Eric over on the deep dive. So you're going to have to hit the people with it. Who's your Nuke of the night today?
Well, it could be Donovan Clingan, the guy I just said, but that would be too easy. So I'm going to go with his teammate, my boy, one of my favorite players in the league, Anthony Simons. I like this spot all over. Lakers, Portland gives you late game equity in terms of lineup construction. We might have injury news too with Scoot, Grant. I mean, the Robert Williams news doesn't matter for him, but the Scoot injury does, and Grant does to a certain extent too. I think this game is close. I like Simons a lot here. He's been playing big minutes. Portland has been playing very competitive as of recently. So give me Simons at 8% as my Nuke of the night.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, pretty off the board. Pretty off the board, I know, but
I don't mind it, though. I mean, I've got double-digit exposure to him. He's only projected for 8% ownership. You got your lineup backloaded there, so if any kind of weird news breaks, you got some flexibility. By the way, also, Donovan Clingan, I was just updating my lineups. Also, he's somebody who I'm also getting overweight to the field to as a contrarian option. So not that this is who my Nuke of the night is, but I do like that I'm getting to at least some Portland players just naturally without changing anything, which gives us a little bit of added flexibility should LeBron be ruled out. For myself, though, I'm going to circle back to somebody who I mentioned before, Kawhi Leonard. I think that he's a really strong option on FanDuel as well as DraftKings. No Norman Powell tonight. I think we're going to see a bigger role from him going forward down the stretch of the season. I think the Clippers want to make sure that he's at least conditioned enough to handle a relatively big workload come the playoffs. Clippers will be a playoff team this year, which I didn't think was going to be the case in the offseason. So Kawhi Leonard for me, he's, as far as pay-up options go, if we're considering a pay-up guy, he's currently my favorite one on the slate relative to his ownership, Matt.
Yeah, I'm with you. He looks just like a really solid play. No qualms about him at all. I like that. I like that call.
All right. Uploading my lineups right now. And for yourself here, Matt, is there anything that you are noticing in your lineups or looking at on the slate as being different from what it was you were thinking your lineup was going to be looking like before we started?
Not really, no. Just minor tweaks. Still Again, we haven't even gotten really the late news yet, so still waiting. My main decision point, honestly, was do I lock in Carter with Nurkic or do I play Klingon over one of them? And as of right now, I'm playing Klingon over Carter. Carter looks really good, but he doesn't project as well as I thought he would. So he projects for 24 and a half fantasy points. That's solid at 4,100, but that's not someone like I need. And Klingon, if injury news breaks right, like I think his upside is massive here. And he's not going to be 5,600 when Ayton's out. So that's the big decision point for me. And I'm happy Carter doesn't lock until 7:30 because I get a little time there.
I ended up on 37% of Wendell Carter Jr. I'm good with that number. I'm more than double the field on what the projected ownership is. It's not so much that I'm massively, inhibiting my ability to make late swaps or anything like that later. So I feel like I have a good amount of Wendell Carter Jr. because he is somebody I like the upside of. As far as other players in my lineup, I did end up getting to more of Jeremy Sochan than I thought I was going to. He landed in a pretty good amount of lineups. If he doesn't end up starting, I assume that is going to fall at least a little bit by the wayside here. And then as far as some of the other stuff on the slate, I've got Elfrid Payton about half my lineups, which is also less than what it was when we started the show. My first run, I had like 75% of Elf. Now he's in about half my lineups. And nothing else that really stands out too much for me. Keeping your eye on post-lock news, which, by the way, I'm going to be with Ben Raza over in Playback in about 90 seconds here. So come join us over there, guys, and like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel after we finish up here. Outside of LeBron, anything you're really keeping your eye on for post-lock?
Yeah, starting lineups, Spurs starting lineup, Hornets starting lineup. Robert Williams. I'm backloading a lot, so a lot of this stuff's going to be important for me. I'm foregoing most of the early games.
Okay.
The biggest worry for me is the Knicks in doing that. Again, I'm only playing one lineup, but I just think that this is definitely a slate where you can cut this slate in half if you want and just play late guys. You don't have to do that, but there's certainly enough plays to do that if you want.
Well, OG Anunoby was just ruled out. Is that going to change your stance on trying to get away from Brunson or Cat?
It might. And I mean, I wasn't like I was trying to get away from them. It's just like there's only certain, so many guys you can play, and they were casualties for me. They might not be casualties anymore.
Yeah, they're both going to look a little bit better. And Anunoby, who was listed as questionable, but if you guys remember the slate the Knicks played prior to the All-Star break, he was listed as questionable. We were assuming that he was out for that day. So it didn't really make a massive difference when he ultimately actually was ruled out. Today, though, we had Anunoby in our projections, so it is going to make a pretty big difference. We do have a starting lineup here: Brunson, McBride, Bridges, Achua, and Towns. So, no Josh Hart there for the Knicks tonight either. I think that it's going to be really hard to get away from Brunson and Cat. I already like them a good amount. And when I run late swaps in post-lock here, when everything gets updated, I'm going to have even more of them. So any final thoughts on the Knicks situation or anything else for the slate before Ben and I head on into Playback?
No, I think that's it.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, we got our link join offer. So if you guys want to get free months of core access to our Sims, player projections, everything else on the site, sign up at any of our affiliate partners down below. We got our Portfolio EV promo going on, promo code return. So a couple ways for you guys to get some good value, save some money for the second half of the season while making some cash for yourself. Other than that, join myself and Ben Raza over in Playback. Jordan's dropped the link into YouTube chat. So if you guys are looking to get into Playback, all you have to do is just click that link there. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching. Good luck tonight. See y'all in Playback.